The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like angry wasps. Master Sergeant Claire Hendricks stood at the front of the classroom, her hands steady despite the tremor that lived somewhere deeper, in a place she never talked about. 23 faces stared back at her, young faces, smooth faces, faces that had never seen what she'd seen, faces that believed technology could save them. She held up a pair of wire cutters. The metal caught the light, old and scarred, the rubber grips worn smooth by hands that were no longer alive. My father carried these in Desert Storm. Claire's voice filled the room like gravel rolling down a tin roof. He defused 17 devices with them during the liberation of Kuwait. No robots, no AI. Just his hands and his brain, and the knowledge that one wrong cut meant he'd never see another sunrise. A hand shot up. Corporal Jamal Washington, 24 years old, fresh from advanced technical school, too smart for his own good. The kind of Marine who thought every problem had a digital solution. Master Sergeant, with respect, we have Talon robots now. AI threat analysis. Why are we learning techniques from 30 years ago? Claire set the wire cutters down on the metal desk. The sound echoed in the silence. She'd heard this question before. She'd hear it again. The answer never changed. Because technology fails, Corporal, and when it does, you need to know what your hands can do. Washington leaned back in his chair, unconvinced. Beside him, Sergeant Nina Torres took notes. 29 years old, precise, methodical, the kind of soldier who colored inside every line. She wanted to believe in Claire, but belief was hard when the legend standing before them looked more haunted than heroic. The training device sat on the table between them, simple by modern standards. Pressure plate connected to a 9-volt battery, 2 wires leading to a blasting cap buried in clay. The kind of improvised explosive device that had killed thousands in Iraq and Afghanistan. The kind Claire could defuse in her sleep. The kind that still showed up in her nightmares. Torres, you're up! Claire stepped back, giving the younger woman space. Torres approached the device like a surgeon approaching an operating table. Gloved hands, multimeter ready. She traced the circuit, checked voltage, identified the hot wire, everything by the book, everything exactly as the manual prescribed. She reached for the wire cutters. Stop! Claire's command cut through the room. What's the secondary? Torres froze. What's secondary, Master Sergeant? The one you didn't check for. Claire moved to the table, pointed to a shadow beneath the pressure plate. See that? Tilt switch. You cut that wire, the pressure plate releases, the device tilts, mercury flows, boom. You and everyone in this room become a training video on what not to do. Torres's face went pale. She'd missed it. The manual hadn't prepared her for that level of deviousness. The AI analysis hadn't flagged it. But Claire's eyes, trained by 2 decades of crawling through dust and blood, had seen it immediately. The rest of the class leaned forward. Even Washington looked interested now. This is why we learn manual assessment. Claire's voice dropped lower, quieter, the way she spoke when the real lesson began. Because the enemy isn't stupid. They know we have robots. They know we have AI. So they design devices that fool the sensors and trick the algorithms. But they can't fool your hands. Not if you know what you're feeling for. She picked up the wire cutters again. These were made in 1990, same year my father deployed to the Gulf. He carried them through desert operations and supply route clearances in places where Scud missiles fell like rain. When he came home, he gave them to me. Said, every tool has a memory. Respect it. The clock on the wall showed 06:15. 15 more minutes until the class ended. 15 more minutes until Claire could return to her office in the bottle she kept in the bottom drawer, beneath the files she'd never finished reading. 15 more minutes of pretending she was okay. Lance Corporal David Park raised his hand. 22 years old, baby-faced, terrified of everything. Master Sergeant, how many devices have you defused? Claire didn't have to think. The number was carved into her bones, 376. How many failed? The room went still. Even the fluorescent lights seemed to hold their breath. Claire looked at Park, saw the innocence there, the assumption that heroes never failed. She thought about lying, thought about giving him the comfortable answer. Then she thought about Kandahar and the 11 Marines who'd never gotten to ask questions in a classroom again. Her voice barely carried. I failed once. 11 people died, and I've spent every day since then making sure it never happens again. The silence that followed was the kind that pressed against your eardrums. Washington shifted in his seat. Torres's pen stopped moving. Park's face went from curious to horrified. Claire checked her watch. Class dismissed. Study Chapter 7. Manual defusal procedures. No shortcuts. I find out anyone's relying solely on AI analysis, you'll wish you'd never heard my name. The Marines gathered their materials and filed out. All except one. Gunnery Sergeant Marcus Cole stood near the door, 51 years old, gray at the temples, eyes that had seen Panama and Desert Storm, and everything in between. He waited until the room emptied before speaking. "You okay, Master Sergeant?" Claire began packing up the training device. Her hands moved automatically, disconnecting wires, removing batteries, making safe what had never been dangerous. "Fine, Gunny." "You don't look fine." Cole stepped closer. "You look like you're carrying something heavy." "Aren't we all?" Claire snapped the case shut. "You need something?" "Just checking in." Cole crossed his arms. "We've been teaching together for 3 years. I've never seen you mention Kandahar in class before." Claire picked up her father's wire cutters, felt their familiar weight. Maybe it's time they heard it. Maybe they need to know their instructors aren't infallible. Or maybe you're punishing yourself again. Cole's voice carried no judgment, only the quiet observation of someone who'd walked similar roads. "How long since you talked to your brother?" The question landed like a punch. Claire turned away, stared at the wall where training posters hung in neat rows. Proper wire identification, IED recognition patterns, the chain of command for explosive ordnance disposal, everything organized, everything under control, everything except the relationship she destroyed 3 years ago. "He doesn't want to talk to me." "Have you tried?" Claire grabbed her bag, shouldered it with more force than necessary. "He testified against me, Ghani. Told the inquiry board I was negligent. Said I rushed the Kandahar assessment. Said I got his friends killed. So no, I haven't tried. And I'm not going to." She walked toward the door. Cole didn't move. Didn't try to stop her. He just said quietly, "Carrying that guilt alone is going to break you, Claire." She paused in the doorway, hand on the frame. "Then I'll break. But I won't drag him down with me again." The morning sun hit her face as she stepped outside. Marine Corps Mountain Warfare Training Center sprawled across the California landscape. All brown earth and distant peaks and the kind of clear sky that made you believe in second chances. Claire didn't believe in second chances anymore. She believed in protocol and procedure and the bottom of a bottle that never seemed deep enough. Her office was a converted storage room in Building 7, small, windowless, perfect for someone who didn't want to be seen. She unlocked the door, stepped inside, and froze. A red folder sat on her desk. Not just any folder, the kind with classified stamps and chain of custody signatures and the weight of bad news. Claire approached it slowly, the way she'd approach a suspicious package. She opened it. Emergency deployment orders. Firebase Vulture. Siege situation. 83 personnel trapped. All electronic countermeasures compromised. A request immediate EOD support with Class Alpha clearance. Her eyes scanned down the page. Commanding Officer Firebase Vulture, Captain Michael Hendricks. The folder slipped from her hands, papers scattering across the desk. Michael, her brother, 4 years younger, a lifetime of distance between them. The last time they'd spoken was across a hearing room table, him on one side testifying about her negligence, her on the other side accepting the blame she didn't entirely deserve. Her phone rang. She didn't recognize the number, but she knew what it was before she answered. Master Sergeant Hendricks. The voice belonged to Colonel Patricia Warren, MARSOC Command. "You've seen the orders." "Yes, ma'am." Claire's voice came out steadier than she felt. "Firebase Vulture is a remote training installation near the Nevada border. At 0530 this morning, they came under coordinated attack. Sophisticated IED placement. Whoever planned this knew our protocols. All vehicle access is blocked. Communications are jammed. We have 83 Marines cut off and running low on supplies." "What's the threat assessment?" "Unknown." Warren paused. "That's the concerning part. We don't know who's behind this. We don't know their objective, but the IED signatures match patterns we've seen in theater. Someone with advanced training designed this siege." Claire's mind was already working, running scenarios, calculating variables. How long can they hold? 72 hours. Maybe less if the water supply is compromised. "You're the closest Class Alpha EOD specialist. I need you wheels up in 90 minutes. "Ma'am, the orders say Captain Hendricks is the CO. Claire forced herself to say it. "He specifically requested I not be assigned. I'm aware of your history." Warren's tone allowed no argument. I'm also aware you're the best we have for this situation. Personal conflicts are secondary to mission success. Am I clear, Master Sergeant? Crystal, ma'am. Good. You'll have a team. Washington, Torres, Cole, and Park. They're being briefed now. Helicopter departs at 0730. Warren's voice softened slightly. Claire, I know what happened at Kandahar. I know what it cost you. But 83 lives are depending on someone who can think independently when the technology fails. That's you. The call ended. Claire sat in the silence, staring at the red folder. 83 lives, her brother among them. The same brother who'd stood in front of a panel of officers and said she wasn't fit for field duty. The same brother who'd walked out of the hearing room without looking back. She pulled open the bottom desk drawer. The bottle of bourbon sat there, amber and tempting. The solution to every problem that had no real solution. She reached for it, fingers brushing the glass. Then she saw her father's wire cutters lying on the desk where she'd set them. The metal was dull with age, but the edges were still sharp, still capable, still ready. She pushed the drawer closed, left the bottle where it was, picked up the wire cutters and slid them into her kit bag. If she was going to face her brother again, she'd do it sober. She'd do it on her terms. And she'd do it knowing that whatever happened between them, those 83 Marines deserved someone who could keep their hands steady when the world was exploding. The helicopter was a CH-53 Sea Stallion, the kind of machine that sounded like the sky was tearing apart. Claire climbed aboard at 0725, her kit bag heavy against her shoulder. The team was already there. Washington sat near the front, headphones on, tablet glowing in his lap. Running threat analysis probabilities. Torres sat across from him, notebook open, handwriting neat and precise, making contingency lists. Park was near the back, white-knuckled, trying not to look scared. And Cole sat in the middle, calm as a stone in a river, the kind of Marine who'd seen enough combat to know panic was useless. The crew chief gave the signal. The rotor spun faster, the ground dropped away. Claire plugged into the comm system. Over the engine noise, she briefed them. Firebase Vulture is a small training installation, normally 30 personnel, currently housing 83 due to a joint operations exercise. At 0530, they came under coordinated attack. Multiple IEDs disabled all vehicles. Communications are jammed, they're cut off. What's the mission? Washington's voice crackled through the headset. Get them out. Claire pulled up a map on the tablet between them. We land 2 clicks from the perimeter. Trek in on foot. Assess the IED threat. Clear a path for extraction or resupply. Standard EOD support. Who's behind it? Torres asked. Unknown. But the attack signatures are sophisticated. Military-grade ordnance, professional placement. This isn't insurgent amateur hour. Park leaned forward. Master Sergeant, is it true your brother's the CO? Claire met his eyes. Yes. Are you two? Park hesitated. Close? No. The word came out harder than she intended. We're not. The rest of the flight passed in silence. Claire stared out the window, watching California scroll by beneath them. Brown mountains, desert valleys, the kind of landscape that swallowed secrets and kept them forever. She thought about the last time she'd seen Michael, the hearing room with its fluorescent lights and uncomfortable chairs and the panel of officers who'd decided her fate. She thought about what he'd said, that she'd been negligent, that she'd trusted technology over instinct, that she'd gotten 11 Marines killed because she'd rushed the assessment and followed the AI analysis instead of doing a manual sweep. The worst part was, he wasn't entirely wrong. Kandahar, 2019. A compound raid. Intelligence said high-value target inside. Claire's team was tasked with clearing IEDs. The AI analysis ran the patterns, calculated probabilities, declared the entrance safe. 83% confidence. Claire had looked at the data, looked at the compound, felt something wrong in her gut. But 83% was good odds, and they were on a timeline, and she trusted the technology. She'd been 50 meters away when the daisy chain detonated. 6 devices linked together, perfectly placed to create a kill zone. 11 Marines died in the blast. 4 more were injured. Claire survived because she'd hesitated at the last second. Some instinct, too late to save anyone else, had made her stop just outside the blast radius. The investigation cleared her of criminal negligence, but her brother's testimony ensured she'd never lead a field team again. Training duty, a desk, a classroom, a bottle, that was her life now. Until this morning. The helicopter began its descent. Claire could see Firebase Vulture in the distance. Small, remote, surrounded by mountains that turned gold in the morning light. It should have looked peaceful. Instead, it looked like a trap. 2 minutes out, the pilot announced. Claire checked her gear one more time. Wire cutters, multimeter, blast suit components, the tools of her trade, the instruments of salvation or failure. She thought about her father, wondered what he'd say if he could see her now. Probably something about duty, about how the job doesn't care about your feelings or your family problems or the weight you carry. The job just needs doing. The helicopter touched down in a clearing 2 kilometers from the firebase. The rotors kicked up dust that stung like sand in a storm. Claire was first out, boots hitting dirt, already scanning the terrain. The team followed. The pilot gave them a thumbs up through the windscreen. 72 hours. If you're not out by then, we extract without you. Understood. Claire shouldered her pack. The helicopter lifted off, and suddenly the world was very quiet. No engine noise, no rotor wash, just wind and distance, and the smell of sage growing in the cracks of stone. Cole moved up beside her. What's the play? We moved toward the perimeter, slow and careful. Watch for wires, disturbed earth, anything that doesn't belong. Claire pulled out a handheld metal detector. This close to a siege site, every step could be the last one. They walked in single file. Claire at the point, Cole behind her, then Torres, Washington, and Park bringing up the rear. The sun climbed higher. The temperature rose. Sweat soaked through Claire's uniform, but she didn't slow down. 2 kilometers of open ground, 2 kilometers of unknown threats. They covered the first kilometer without incident. Claire's nerves were wire-tight. This was too easy. Professional IED placement meant professional planning, which meant they'd anticipated EOD response, which meant she held up a fist, the team froze. 30 meters ahead, the earth looked wrong, a slight depression, barely visible, the kind of thing you'd miss if you weren't looking for it. Claire approached alone, knelt beside the disturbed soil, brushed away loose dirt with gloved fingers. There, yellow cloth partially buried. She uncovered it carefully. A ribbon, bright yellow, tied around a pressure plate. Her blood went cold. She knew this signature, knew it the way you know a voice on the phone or a face in a crowd, someone she'd worked with, someone she'd trained, someone who marked safe paths with yellow ribbons during route clearance operations. Staff Sergeant Vincent Drake, Kandahar, 2019. One of the 4 survivors, the one who'd lost both legs below the knee, the one who'd received a medical retirement, the one who'd testified at her hearing, voice shaking, describing how he'd been trapped in rubble listening to his brothers die. The one who blamed her for everything. Cole came up beside her. That's an IED. Claire nodded, not trusting her voice. Why mark it? Washington asked, standing a safe distance back. That defeats the purpose. Because he's not trying to kill us. Claire stood, scanned the landscape with new understanding. He's trying to make me think. Every device marked, every trap visible. He wants me to find them. This isn't about casualties. It's about choices. Who? Torres demanded. Someone who knows me. Someone who knows how I work. Claire keyed her radio, switched to the Firebase Vulture command frequency. Firebase Vulture, this is EOD Team Alpha. We're at your perimeter. Request sitrep. Static. Then a voice she hadn't heard in 3 years. A voice that sounded like home and heartbreak in equal measure. EOD Team Alpha, this is Vulture Actual. We read you. Michael. Claire closed her eyes, took a breath. What's your status? 83 personnel, minimal casualties so far. We're locked down. Every exit is blocked with IEDs. Water supply building is rigged. Vehicles are disabled. We have 72 hours of supplies, maybe less. Understood. We're beginning clearance now. Negative. Michael's voice went hard. EOD Team Alpha, identify your team lead. Claire wanted to lie, wanted to hand the radio to Cole, let someone else take this moment. But 83 lives didn't care about family drama. Master Sergeant Claire Hendricks. The silence stretched so long she thought the connection had dropped. Then Michael spoke again, each word carved from ice. Stand down, Master Sergeant. Return to your bird. That's an order. Michael, I'm the closest Class Alpha specialist. Command sent me because... I don't care what command says. Michael's voice rose. I don't care what your clearance is. I will not let you make another Kandahar. 3 years ago, you followed an AI analysis instead of your gut. You rushed an assessment. You got 11 of my friends killed. I will not give you the chance to add 83 more to that body count. Captain, Claire's throat tightened. I'm trying to help. Help? Michael laughed, bitter and broken. You helped at Kandahar. You helped destroy careers. You helped me learn what negligence looks like in a uniform. I requested you specifically not be assigned to this. But here you are. So let me be clear. I would rather my Marines and I die here than trust you to save us. The radio went dead. Claire stood motionless. The desert wind blew hot against her face. Behind her, the team waited. She could feel their stares, could feel the weight of the question they weren't asking. Washington broke the silence. Master Sergeant, what happened at Kandahar? Claire turned to face them, 4 Marines looking at her with varying degrees of confusion and concern. She owed them the truth, owed them the story that had cost her everything. Kandahar 2019. Compound raid. My team was clearing IEDs. We had AI analysis, threat assessment, the full technological package. The data said the entrance was clear, 83% confidence. I looked at the compound, felt something wrong, but the numbers were good and we were on a timeline. So I trusted the tech. She paused, forced herself to continue. There was a daisy chain, 6 devices linked together. The AI missed it. My gut caught it, but too late. 11 Marines died. My brother Michael was assigned to that unit. He lost friends, and he blamed me. Torres spoke carefully. Was it your fault? The official inquiry said no. Claire's voice went flat. My brother's testimony said yes. And somewhere in the middle is the truth. I made a choice. I trusted protocol over instinct. People died. That's the job. That's the weight. And that's why Michael would rather die than let me near this firebase. So what do we do? Park asked. Claire looked toward Firebase Vulture, thought about the 83 people trapped inside, thought about her brother who hated her with the kind of passion that only family could generate. She thought about Vincent Drake, somewhere out there, watching this unfold, waiting to see if she'd learned anything. She picked up the yellow ribbon, held it to the light. We go in anyway, Claire's voice carried no doubt. Michael can hate me all he wants. But those Marines didn't make my mistakes. They don't deserve to pay for them. So we clear the devices, we create a path, and we get them out, whether Michael forgives me or not. He ordered you to stand down, Washington pointed out, and I'm disobeying that order. Claire met each of their eyes in turn. If you want to turn back, I understand. This is my fight, my history, my brother. You don't have to carry my weight. Cole stepped forward. I'm in. His voice was solid as bedrock. Torres nodded. Me too. Washington hesitated, then shouldered his pack. Someone needs to make sure you don't get us killed, Master Sergeant. Park, the youngest, the most terrified, whispered, I'm with you. Claire felt something crack in her chest. Not breaking, shifting, making room for something she'd forgotten how to feel. She nodded once, sharp and military. Then let's go to work. She began walking toward Firebase Vulture, toward her brother's hatred and Vincent's test in the 83 lives that depended on someone who'd failed before learning to succeed. The yellow ribbon fluttered in her hand, a marker, a message, a promise that this siege was personal in ways that had nothing to do with tactics and everything to do with debts unpaid. Behind her, the team followed. Ahead, Firebase Vulture waited, and somewhere in between, the ghosts of Kandahar whispered that some mistakes echo forever, that some failures define you, that some brothers never forgive. Claire walked faster. She had 72 hours to prove the ghosts wrong. The sun climbed toward noon. The desert heat shimmered. And in the distance, beyond the mountains and the mines and the brother who wanted her gone, Firebase Vulture sat like a tomb waiting to be opened. One way or another, Claire Hendricks was going in. The sun was a hammer against the desert floor. Claire Hendricks knelt 200 meters from Firebase Vulture's perimeter, binoculars pressed to her eyes, studying the landscape that wanted to kill her. Behind her, the team waited in whatever shade they could find beneath a rocky outcrop. Ahead, the firebase looked like a monument to abandonment. Guard towers empty, vehicles motionless. The American flag still flying, but nothing else moving. She counted 12 yellow ribbons from her position, 12 visible devices, which meant there were probably 20 more she couldn't see. Vincent Drake had always been thorough. Cole crawled up beside her, his movements careful despite the ache Claire knew lived in his knees. The kind of ache that came from carrying too much weight for too many years. What are we looking at, Master Sergeant? Claire handed him the binoculars. Every approach is marked. Main gate, side entrance, vehicle checkpoint. He's not hiding them. He wants me to see them. Cole swept the binoculars across the perimeter, yellow ribbons fluttering in the hot wind like surrender flags. Why mark them at all? Defeats the purpose of an ambush. Because this isn't an ambush. Claire pulled out her notebook, began sketching the layout. This is a test. Vincent wants me to find the devices. The challenge isn't detection, it's decision. Decision about what? About who lives and who dies. Claire's pencil moved across the paper, marking positions, calculating angles. At Kandahar, I made a choice that killed 11 people. Vincent was one of the survivors. He wants to put me in that position again. Make me choose. Make me live with the weight. Cole lowered the binoculars. That's some cold-blooded revenge. Is it revenge if he's right? Claire closed the notebook. At Kandahar, I chose to trust technology over my gut. People died. Vincent lost his legs. My brother lost his friends. Maybe I deserve this. Cole's voice went hard in a way she'd never heard before. Cut that shit out, Master Sergeant. You made a call with the information you had. The AI was wrong. The intelligence was wrong. You were doing your job. And 11 people are still dead. They would have been dead anyway if you'd gone with your gut and been wrong. Cole's weathered face showed no sympathy, only the brutal math of command. You don't get to punish yourself forever. Those 83 Marines in that firebase don't care about your guilt. They care about whether you can do the job. So can you. Claire looked at him for a long moment, saw the gray in his beard, saw the lines around his eyes, saw a man who'd made his own hard choices and learned to live with them. She thought about the bottle in her desk drawer back at Bridgeport, thought about the divorce papers she'd signed 2 years ago, thought about Michael's voice on the radio telling her he'd rather die than trust her. Then she thought about her father's wire cutters in her kit bag, tools that had saved lives before she was born, tools that could save lives today if her hands stayed steady. I can do the job. Her voice carried no doubt this time, whether Michael forgives me or not. Good. Cole shifted position, scanning the firebase again. So what's the play? Claire pulled out a map, spread it on the ground. The team gathered around. Washington with his tablet. Torres with her notebook. Park trying to look calm and failing. Claire pointed to the main gate. Device 1 is here. Most obvious approach. Vincent marked it because he wants me to deal with it first. My guess is it's designed to force a choice. Something that makes me pick between 2 bad options. What kind of choice? Torres asked. Won't know until we're on top of it. Claire traced a finger along the perimeter. But if I know Vincent, every device is going to have the same structure. Not just a bomb to defuse. A decision to make. Save this or save that. Help these people or help those people. Classic trolley problem. Military edition. Washington looked up from his tablet. That's psychological torture. That's the point. Claire folded the map. Vincent doesn't want me dead. He wants me broken. Wants me to feel what he felt at Kandahar. Helpless. Trapped. Watching people die because of choices I make. So we don't play his game. Washington's voice carried the confidence of someone who'd never had to make a choice like that. We find a third option. Claire almost smiled. If there was a third option, Vincent already thought of it and closed it off. He's had 6 months to plan this. We've had 6 hours. Our only advantage is that he wants me to succeed. Park's voice was small. Why would he want that? Because if I fail, if I just give up and walk away, then he doesn't get his revenge. Claire stood, brushed dust from her knees. He needs me to try, needs me to struggle, needs me to make the impossible choices so I can understand what he went through. The real torture isn't failure, it's success that costs too much. The sun climbed higher. The temperature pushed past 100 degrees. Claire distributed water from their packs, made sure everyone drank. Dehydration killed soldiers faster than bullets in this terrain. They had 72 hours of supplies. 72 hours to clear enough devices to extract 83 Marines. The math was brutal and simple. They moved out at 1300 hours. Single file. Claire at point, eyes on the ground, watching for the signs Vincent would have left. Disturbed earth, unnatural shadows, the subtle wrongness that separated safe ground from killing ground. It took them 40 minutes to cross 200 meters. When they reached the perimeter fence, Claire held up a fist. Everyone froze. The main gate stood 20 meters ahead, chain link and concrete. Beyond it, the empty firebase, and hanging from the gate's center post, a yellow ribbon tied in a bow. Claire approached alone. The rest of the team took cover positions. She knelt beside the gate, examined the lock mechanism. Standard military issue. But welded to the lock was a metal box, and running from the post were two sets of wires. One set heading left toward the water supply building, one set heading right, deeper into the firebase. Her radio crackled. Static. Then a voice she remembered from briefing rooms and hospital visits and testimony that had destroyed her career. "Hello, Claire." Vincent Drake's voice was calm, almost pleasant. "Welcome to Session 1. Vincent?" Claire kept her voice steady. "You've gone to a lot of trouble. 22 years I spent learning from you. Seemed only fair I give you a final exam." Vincent paused. "You're looking at Device 1. Let me explain the parameters. 2 circuits, 2 choices. Left circuit disarms the gate and lets you inside, but it triggers the device at the water supply building. Right circuit disarms the water supply, but the gate stays locked. You have 83 Marines. They need water to survive 72 hours, but they also need you to get through this gate to reach them. Choose." Claire studied the wiring, professional work, clean connections, the kind of skill that came from years of field experience. There has to be a way to disarm both. There isn't. Vincent's voice held no malice, only certainty. "I've been planning this for 6 months, Claire. Every scenario, every workaround. Trust me when I tell you, those 2 circuits are independent. Disarm one, the other triggers. It's a zero-sum game, just like Kandahar." Torres' voice came through on the team frequency. "Master Sergeant, we could breach the fence instead of the gate." "Fence is rigged." Vincent again, listening to everything. "Shape charges every 10 meters. Try to cut through, you'll lose whoever's holding the cutters." Claire knew I'd think of that. Washington spoke up. "Robot could potentially disarm both simultaneously." Claire had already pulled out the small remote unit from her pack. She powered it on. The screen flickered, filled with static. Radio jamming is scrambling the controls. She looked at the gate, at Vincent's careful work. He planned for that too. "No robots, Claire." Vincent's voice carried something like satisfaction. "Just your hands. Just your training, just the impossible choice. You have 83 people. Weather forecast says 102 degrees today. Current water supply in the firebase is rated for 40 hours maximum. But if you can't get through this gate, you can't reach the other devices. Can't clear a path for extraction. So what's it going to be? Water or access? Survival or hope?" Claire stood, walked back to where the team waited. Cole met her eyes with a question. She shook her head. "It's exactly what he said. 2 circuits. Can't disarm both. Have to choose." "What's the tactical call?" Cole asked. "Tactically?" Claire pulled off her gloves, wiped sweat from her forehead. "Open the gate. Without access, we can't help anyone. Water can be rationed. 3 days in this heat is brutal but survivable if they're disciplined." "And if they're not disciplined?" Torres pressed. "Then people start dying of dehydration in 48 hours instead of 72. Claire looked at each of them. "But if we don't get inside, they die anyway. At least this way they have a chance." "That's cold math." Washington's voice held no judgment, just observation. "That's command." Cole's response was quiet. "Sometimes every option is bad. You pick the least bad and live with it." Claire moved back to the gate. Her hands were steady as she opened her kit. Wire cutters, multimeter, the tools of her trade. She connected the multimeter to the left circuit, checked voltage. Live. Connected to the right circuit. Also live. Both circuits armed, both waiting for her decision. She thought about the Marines inside Firebase Vulture. 83 people she'd never met. 83 people who probably knew her name from Kandahar. Knew her as the Master Sergeant who'd gotten 11 Marines killed. And now here she was, about to make another choice that might kill more. Her radio crackled again. Not Vincent this time. Michael. "Claire, what are you doing?" Her brother's voice was tight with stress. "My job." Claire positioned the wire cutters on the left circuit, opening the gate. "No." Michael's word came out hard. "Secure the water supply. We can ration what we have, but we need that building intact for when resupply comes." "Resupply isn't coming." "Michael." Claire didn't move the cutters. "Not until we clear enough devices to create a landing zone. That means I need access. That means opening this gate. You're prioritizing your convenience over our survival." Michael's accusation landed like a punch. Just like Kandahar. You rushed the assessment because you were on a timeline, and people died. Claire closed her eyes, saw the compound in Kandahar, saw the AI readout showing 83% safe, saw herself making the call to proceed, saw the flash that had killed 11 and changed everything. She opened her eyes, looked at the wire cutters, looked at the gate, looked at the choice Vincent had designed specifically for her. I'm not rushing, Michael. I've been examining this device for 20 minutes. I've run every scenario. There is no good option, only less bad ones. I'm opening the gate because it gives us the best chance of getting everyone out alive. You can hate me for it. You can testify against me again if we survive. But I'm making the call. Don't! Michael's voice cracked. Claire, please, I'm begging you, don't make another Kandahar. This isn't Kandahar. Claire's voice went soft. Kandahar, I trusted technology over my instinct. Here, I'm trusting 20 years of experience. I'm trusting my hands. I'm trusting that sometimes the only way forward is through the hard choice. Dad would have understood that. Don't bring Dad into this. Dad carried the same weight we do. Claire positioned the cutters. He made calls that cost lives. He lived with it. And he taught me that command means choosing between bad and worse. I'm choosing, Michael. I'm opening the gate. If people die of dehydration because of this, then I'll carry it, just like I carry Kandahar. But I'm done letting fear of failure stop me from doing my job. Claire took a breath. I'm cutting in 3, 2, 1. She squeezed. The cutters bit through the wire. The gate's lock mechanism clicked. And somewhere in the distance, toward the water supply building, there was a dull thump. Not an explosion, just a trigger activating, locking that building down, making the water supply inaccessible. 72 hours of water just became 40 hours. Claire stood, pushed the gate open. The hinges screamed from disuse. Beyond the gate, Firebase Vulture waited. Empty buildings, abandoned equipment, the ghost of normalcy in a place that had become a trap. Vincent's voice returned to the radio. Interesting choice. You picked escape over survival. Your brother would have chosen differently. Maybe that's why I'm here and he's stuck inside. Claire shouldered her pack. Next device, Vincent. What fresh hell do you have waiting? Patience, Claire. Vincent's voice held something like amusement. You've got a long walk ahead, plenty of time to doubt yourself. That's what you're good at, isn't it? Second guessing, wondering if you made the right call, lying awake at night thinking about the lives you cost. The line went dead. Claire led the team through the gate. Behind them, the desert stretched empty and indifferent. Ahead, Firebase Vulture swallowed them into its perimeter. Guard towers stood silent. Barracks buildings baked in the sun. Everything still. Everything waiting. They moved through the compound slowly. Claire's eyes tracked every detail. Disturbed earth. Unusual objects. The small wrongnesses that meant danger. She counted 6 more yellow ribbons visible from the main approach. 6 more devices between her and the command center, where Michael waited with his 83 Marines and his 40 hours of water. Cole moved up beside her. How you holding up, Master Sergeant? Ask me in 72 hours. Claire scanned the building's entrance, saw nothing suspicious, kept moving. Right now, I'm just trying to get to the next device without stepping on something that removes my legs. Think Vincent's watching? Definitely. Claire pointed to a corner of the barracks. Camera there, covered with dust, but functional. He's been living here for months. Probably has full surveillance. How'd he get past security in the first place? Claire had been wondering the same thing. Firebase Vulture was small, low priority, but it still had protocols, still had background checks, still had someone who was supposed to notice when a medically retired staff sergeant with a vendetta started planting bombs. Someone helped him, or someone looked the other way. She filed the question away for later, if there was a later. They reached the inner compound. The buildings here were newer, better maintained. Administrative offices, training facilities. And ahead, Sayhen, blocking the main approach to the command center, another yellow ribbon. Device 2, Claire held up a fist. Team spread out in defensive positions. This one was more complex. Not a single device, but a daisy chain. 6 individual charges connected by det cord, spread across the approach in a pattern that left no clear path. Claire knelt beside the first device, examined the wiring. Torres came up behind her. Can we go around? Claire looked left and right. The buildings created a natural choke point. The only alternatives were through narrow alleys that probably had their own surprises. We could, but that's what Vincent expects. So we do what he doesn't expect. We do what he knows we have to do. Claire straightened. Vincent's not stupid. He knows we need to reach the command center. This is the most direct route. He put 6 devices here because he wants to see how I handle a complex clearance. The radio crackled. Vincent's voice again. Device 2, 6 charges in sequence. But here's the problem, Claire. You only have equipment for 4 complete defusals. Blasting caps, wire cutters, the works. You can fully disarm 4 of these devices. The other 2 stay active. So you have to choose which ones to leave armed and then plot a path around them. Choose wrong, you and your team get vaporized. Choose right, you move forward. But either way, you're leaving behind bombs that might kill someone else later. Claire pulled out her kit, spread the contents on the ground. Vincent was right, 4 complete sets of tools. She could stretch it to 5 if she got creative, but not 6. This is impossible. Park's voice shook. We can't leave active devices behind. We don't have a choice. Washington was already running calculations on his tablet. We disarmed the minimum necessary to create a safe path. Leave the rest for a follow-on team. There won't be a follow-on team. Cole's observation was quiet but certain. This is a siege. No one else is coming until we clear enough for a helicopter to land. Whatever we leave behind stays behind. Claire studied the pattern. 6 devices. She needed to disarm at least 3 to create a narrow corridor. But which 3? The placement was deliberate. If she chose wrong, the path would put them too close to an active device. One misstep, and the pressure wave would do what shrapnel couldn't. She pulled out her father's wire cutters, felt their familiar weight, thought about what he would say. Probably something about how the job doesn't care about your feelings. The job just needs doing. Torres knelt beside her. Master Sergeant, I've been thinking, what if we don't fully disarm them? What if we just disconnect the daisy chain? Make them independent devices instead of linked ones? Then we'd need to plot a path that avoids all 6 instead of just 2. Claire shook her head. Vincent would have thought of that. Probably has anti-handling devices on the connectors. Let me check. Torres pulled out her own multimeter, approached the date cord connecting the first and second devices. She moved slowly, carefully, the way Claire had taught her in training, probed the connection point, tested voltage. Then she looked back at Claire with wide eyes. Master Sergeant, there's no anti-handling device here. Claire moved closer, examined the connection herself. Torres was right. Clean det cord, no secondary triggers, no traps, just a straightforward link in the chain. She straightened, looked at the other connections. Same thing, all clean, which made no sense. Vincent was too good to miss something that basic. Unless he didn't miss it. Claire's mind raced. Unless he wants us to disconnect the chain. Wants us to think we found a way around his trap. Torres backed away from the date cord. What happens if we disconnect it? Claire examined the first device more closely. Pulled out a handheld sensor, checked for additional components. Found it buried beneath the primary charge. A tilt sensor, nearly invisible. Set to trigger if the device was moved or disturbed. If we disconnect the chain, the devices become independent, which means we'd need to physically move them to create a path. She pointed to the tilt sensor, and moving them triggers these. So we're back to the original problem. Washington's frustration was evident. Disarm 4, leave 2 active, plot a path. Claire sat back on her heels, studied the pattern again. Something was nagging at her, some detail she was missing. She looked at the devices individually, looked at the spacing, looked at the materials used. Then she saw it. The det cord, tan-colored, Egyptian manufacture. The same kind Vincent had used at Kandahar. And date cord had a weakness, a manufacturing defect that caused degradation in extreme heat. She pulled out a knife, carefully scraped a sample from the nearest det cord. The outer sheath crumbled in her fingers, degraded, useless. This wouldn't detonate properly. Vincent, she keyed the radio. You used Egyptian det cord, same as Kandahar, but I know something you don't. That cord has a manufacturing defect. Degrades in heat over 100 degrees. Today's 102. You planted these 6 months ago. This cord is compromised. Silence. Then Vincent, his voice quieter. Clever, Claire. You always did have a good memory for technical specs, which means these devices might not detonate even if triggered. Claire felt a small surge of hope. Some of them. Vincent's voice hardened. But not all. I replaced the det cord on 3 of these last week. Fresh cord. Full potency. So yes, 3 of them have degraded cord and won't explode, but 3 of them absolutely will. Your job is to figure out which ones are which. Guess wrong, you die. Choose wisely. The hope died. Claire looked at the 6 devices, 3 safe, 3 deadly. No way to tell which was which without a full examination. And a full examination of all 6 would take hours they didn't have. Cole moved up beside her. What's the play? We checked them all, manually, no shortcuts. Claire pulled out her multimeter. We test the det cord on each device. Fresh cord will show different electrical resistance than degraded cord. It'll take time, but we'll know for certain which 3 are safe. How long? Torres asked. 4 hours, maybe 5. Claire began working on the first device, and we'll have to do it without shade in 100-degree heat. So pace yourselves, drink water, and watch for heat stroke. I need everyone functional. Washington looked at his watch. That puts us at 1,800 hours before we can move forward. We'll lose daylight. Better to lose daylight than lose our lives. Claire connected her multimeter leads to the det cord, started taking readings. This is what Vincent wants. Wants me to rush. Wants me to take chances like I did at Kandahar. But I'm not playing that game anymore. We do this right or we don't do it at all. The sun climbed higher. The heat became oppressive. Claire worked methodically through each device, testing, measuring, recording data. Her hands were steady, but her mind was racing. 40 hours of water left in the Firebase, 5 hours to clear this obstacle, 67 hours remaining after that to clear enough devices for extraction. The math was getting tighter. Cole worked beside her, holding equipment, shading her from the sun when he could, offering water every 30 minutes. Torres and Washington took turns on security, watching for threats that probably weren't coming. Park tried to help, but mostly just tried to stay calm. Device 1, degraded det cord, safe. Device 2, fresh date cord, deadly. Device 3, degraded det cord, safe. Device 4, fresh date cord, deadly. Device 5, degraded det cord, safe. Device 6, fresh date cord, deadly. Perfect alternating pattern. Vincent had made it as hard as possible. They couldn't create a straight path. They'd have to weave between the deadly devices, staying exactly in the narrow corridor where the blast radius didn't overlap. Claire marked the safe path with small stones, explained the route to her team. Washington pulled out his tablet, created a digital map of the path for future reference. Torres checked and double-checked Claire's work, verifying the measurements. By 1,800 hours, they were ready to move forward. The sun was lower now, the heat fractionally less brutal. Claire took point again, walking the marked path. Every step deliberate, every placement exact. No room for error. Halfway through, her radio crackled. Claire, Michael's voice. Stop. I'm kind of busy, Michael. Claire didn't break stride. You've been at this for 5 hours. 5 hours while we're sitting here with less than 40 hours of water. You're proving Vincent right. You're improvising instead of following protocol. Claire stopped walking, turned to face the command center even though Michael couldn't see her. Protocol? You want me to follow protocol? The protocol got 11 people killed at Kandahar because you didn't verify the AI properly. Michael's anger came through clearly. You rushed, you cut corners, and now you're doing it again. Taking risks, making up your own procedures. No, Claire's voice went hard. At Kandahar, I trusted the protocol, trusted the AI, trusted the technology, and it was wrong. Here, I'm using my hands and my brain and 20 years of experience. I spent 5 hours making sure 3 explosive devices don't kill my team. That's not improvising. That's called doing the job right. You're second-guessing everything. Just like you second-guess yourself about the divorce, about your career, about whether you should even be in this uniform anymore. The words landed like physical blows. Claire's hands trembled. She looked down at them, forced them still. Michael continued, Vincent's in your head, Claire. He's making you doubt yourself, making you overthink. At Kandahar, you made a fast decision that was wrong. Now you're making slow decisions that might be just as wrong. You're paralyzed by your own guilt. Claire wanted to scream, wanted to tell him he was wrong, wanted to defend herself. But she couldn't, because part of what Michael said was true. She did second-guess everything. Did lie awake wondering if her judgment could be trusted. Did reach for the bottle instead of dealing with the weight. Master Sergeant, Torres's voice broke through. You've been standing in the middle of this path for 2 minutes. You good? Claire looked at her squad. Young Torres, who trusted her. Old Cole, who believed in her. Washington, who was learning despite his skepticism. Park, who was terrified but still following. They were watching her, waiting for her to lead. She thought about her father, about the wire cutters, about the lesson he'd taught her. The job doesn't care about your feelings. I'm good. Claire started walking again. And Michael, I can't change Kandahar, can't change the divorce, can't change the fact that you hate me. But I can change today. I'm coming for you, whether you want me to or not. You can hate me after we're all alive. She kept walking. The marked path led through the devices, between the deadly ones, past the safe ones. Her boots found each stone marker without her having to look. Muscle memory, training, 20 years of learning to trust her feet. The team followed, single file, each person matching her steps exactly. No deviations, no mistakes. They cleared device 2, emerged on the other side. The command center was visible now, just 200 meters ahead. Between them and it, Claire counted 4 more yellow ribbons, 4 more devices, 4 more impossible choices. But they'd made it through the first 2. 83 Marines were still alive. 40 hours of water remained. And somewhere inside the command center, Michael was learning that his sister wasn't the same person who'd failed at Kandahar. She was someone who'd learned from failure. Someone who'd let it teach her. Someone who checked every wire and measured every risk and refused to let guilt make her decisions. Claire keyed the radio one more time. Vincent, we're through device 2. What's next? The response came after a long pause. Respect, Claire. You're learning, you're thinking, but the real tests are ahead. Sleep well tonight. Tomorrow we see if you can make the hard choices when lives actually depend on them. The sun touched the horizon, the temperature dropped. The team found cover in an empty barracks building, set up a defensive position, rationed their water and food. They had 67 hours left, 4 more devices to clear minimum, and a brother who would rather die than forgive. Claire sat against a wall, cleaning her father's wire cutters by the light of a chemical lamp. The metal gleamed. The edges were still sharp, still ready. Cole settled beside her. Long day? They're all long days. Claire didn't look up from the wire cutters. You did good today. Cole's voice was quiet. Made the hard call at the gate. Took the time to do device 2 right. The team's starting to believe in you. What about you, Gunny? Claire met his eyes. You believe in me? I've believed in you since the day we met. Cole pulled out his own kit, started his nightly maintenance routine. Question is whether you believe in yourself. Claire looked at the wire cutters, thought about her father, thought about Kandahar, thought about Michael and Vincent and the weight that never seemed to lift. Ask me in 67 hours. She set the wire cutters aside. If we're all still alive, maybe I'll have an answer. Outside, the desert night settled in. Stars appeared. The wind shifted. And somewhere in the darkness, Vincent Drake watched and waited for tomorrow's test, for the moment when Claire would have to choose between her brother and the mission, between saving lives and saving herself. The real siege wasn't the firebase. It was the war inside her head. And tomorrow that war would reach its first real battle. Dawn came to Firebase Vulture like a promise that couldn't be kept. Claire Hendricks woke on a concrete floor, her back screaming protest, her mouth tasting like copper and dust. Around her, the team stirred in the abandoned barracks. Cole was already up, checking equipment. Torres stretched carefully, working out kinks from sleeping on hard ground. Washington scrolled through his tablet, reviewing yesterday's data. Park looked like he hadn't slept at all. 36 hours of water remaining, 60 hours until the deadline. 4 more devices between them and the command center. Claire stood, joints popping, and moved to the window. The firebase looked different in the morning light. Less abandoned, more deliberate. She could see the pattern now, the spacing of the yellow ribbons, the geometry of Vincent's trap. This wasn't random chaos. This was architecture, a structure built from explosives and psychology designed to crush one specific person. Her. Cole appeared beside her with an MRE packet and a water bottle. Breakfast of champions. How much do we have left? Claire took the offered items. Water, 3 days if we ration hard. Food, 5 days. Ammunition, more than we'll need unless this turns into a shooting war. Cole's weathered face showed concern. The water's the problem. Always is in the desert. What's our move today? Torres joined them, notebook already open. Claire pulled out her map. spread it on a crate that served as a table. The team gathered around. She pointed to their current position, then traced a finger toward the command center. 3 buildings between us and Michael. Command center where he's holed up with 30 Marines. Barracks B with another 28. Medical bay with 25 wounded from the initial attack. Vincent's arranged them in a triangle. Each building is 200 meters from the others. Perfect geometry. What's the threat? Washington asked. Haven't gotten close enough to see. Claire pulled out binoculars, scanned the 3 buildings. But if I know Vincent, each building has at least one device at its entrance, and those devices will be connected somehow. He's good at making things complicated. So we clear them one at a time. Park's voice held hope. 3 buildings, 3 devices. We can do that. Claire wished it were that simple. She wished a lot of things were simple, but 20 years of experience had taught her that when something looked straightforward in their line of work, it usually meant you were missing something critical. Let's move out. She shouldered her pack, eyes open, mind sharp. Vincent's had all night to think about what we're going to try next. They left the barracks at 0630. The sun was already hot, promising another day of brutal temperatures. They moved in tactical formation, Claire at point, scanning for disturbances. The firebase was eerily quiet. No birds, no insects, just wind moving through empty buildings and the sound of their own breathing. It took them 40 minutes to reach the inner compound. The 3 buildings sat exactly as Claire had described. Command center to the north, Barracks B to the west, Medical bay to the east, and in front of each entrance, a yellow ribbon fluttering in the morning breeze. Claire held up a fist. The team took cover positions behind a burned-out vehicle. She studied the scene through her binoculars. Each device was clearly visible, not hidden, not camouflaged. Vincent wanted her to see them, wanted her to know exactly what she was facing. Her radio crackled. She knew who it would be before the voice came through. Good morning, Claire. Vincent Drake sounded refreshed, almost cheerful. Sleep well? Like a baby. Claire kept her binoculars on the buildings. You? I don't sleep much anymore. Phantom pain, you know. Legs that aren't there still hurt like they are. Vincent paused. But I had a good night watching you all on the cameras. Your team's starting to trust you. That's nice to see. What's device 3, Vincent? Eager to get to work. I like that. Vincent's voice changed, became more formal. Welcome to the final examination, Claire. What you're looking at is a moral philosophy problem. The trolley problem, to be specific. You remember that from ethics training? Claire remembered. A thought experiment. A trolley heading toward 5 people tied to the tracks. You can pull a lever to divert it to a sidetrack where it will kill only one person. Do you act? Do you choose who dies? Or do you refuse to participate? I remember. Claire lowered the binoculars. Good, because I've built you a real-world version. Vincent continued. Those 3 buildings, 3 separate devices, but they're all connected to one master circuit. And here's the beautiful part. You can only save 2. Disarm any one device and the other 2 detonate. The master circuit is inside the command center, where your brother is. To access it, you'd have to breach the command center. But breaching triggers the devices at Barracks B and Medical Bay. So you have a choice, Claire. Save your brother and 30 Marines or save 53 Marines in the other 2 buildings. But you can't save all 3. Claire's stomach turned to ice. She looked at each building. Imagine the people inside. Scared, trapped, depending on her to make the right choice. Except there was no right choice. Only terrible ones. Cole moved beside her. Please tell me he's bluffing. He's not. Claire's voice was hollow. Vincent doesn't bluff. He spent 6 months planning this. Every detail, every contingency. This is real. Torres pulled out her tablet. There has to be a way to disarm all 3. A workaround, a technical solution. There isn't. Washington had already run the scenarios. If they're on a master circuit, and the master circuit is inside the command center, and breaching the command center triggers the other 2 devices. His voice trailed off. The math doesn't work. What if we don't breach? What if we find another way to access the circuit? Park was grasping at solutions that didn't exist. Vincent would have thought of that. Claire's mind was racing through possibilities, discarding each one as quickly as it formed. He's had 6 months. We've had 6 hours. He's closed every loophole. Her radio crackled again. Not Vincent this time. Michael. Claire, we can hear everything on the command frequency. Michael's voice was steady despite the circumstances. Don't make this about me. Save Barracks B and Medical Bay. That's an order. Michael, shut up. Claire's response was automatic. I'm trying to think. There's nothing to think about. Michael's command voice came through strong. 53 lives versus 30. The math is simple. I'm ordering you to prioritize the larger groups. You don't get to give me orders right now. Claire stood, began walking toward the 3 buildings. Cole moved to follow, but she waved him back. Not for this. This reconnaissance she needed to do alone. She approached the command center first. The device at the entrance was sophisticated. Pressure plate with wireless transmitter. The transmitter would send a signal to the other 2 devices the moment the door was breached. She couldn't cut the antenna without triggering it, couldn't jam the signal without the right equipment. Vincent had designed it to be tamper-proof. She moved to Barracks B, same setup. Pressure plate, wireless transmitter, yellow ribbon tied to the door handle like a sick joke. Medical Bay was last. She could hear sounds from inside. Moaning, someone crying. The wounded from the initial attack, stuck in a building that had become their tomb. She pressed her hand against the door, felt the vibration of people living on the other side. 25 Marines who'd done nothing wrong, who'd just been in the wrong place when Vincent decided to build his test. Claire returned to her team. Cole read her face immediately. No way around it? No way around it. Claire sat on the ground, suddenly exhausted. Vincent's trapped us in a real trolley problem. We can save 2 buildings, or we can try to save all 3 and probably lose everyone. So we choose. Tora's voice was quiet. We save Barracks B and Medical Bay. 53 people. Let the command center go. That's my brother in there. Claire's response came out sharper than intended. I know. Torres met her eyes. But he's also right about the math. 30 versus 53. If we have to choose, we choose the bigger number. Since when do we reduce Marines to numbers? Claire stood again, paced. Every one of those 83 people is someone's son or daughter, someone's brother or sister. We don't get to decide their value by counting heads. Then what do we decide it by? Washington's question was genuine. How do we make this choice? We don't. Claire stopped pacing. Because I'm not playing Vincent's game. Master Sergeant, with respect, we don't have another option. Cole's voice held regret. Sometimes command means making the impossible choice. Claire pulled her father's wire cutters from her kit, stared at them, thought about what her father would say, thought about Kandahar and the choice she'd made there, thought about the 11 Marines who died because she trusted technology over her instinct. Then she thought about Michael, 4 years younger, a lifetime of history between them, the brother who'd testified against her, the brother who'd said she was negligent, the brother who'd walked away and never looked back, the brother who was sitting in that command center right now, waiting to deed because of a choice she was about to make. She keyed her radio, changed frequency, direct to Vincent's channel. Vincent, I want to make you an offer. Static. Then Vincent's voice, curious, I'm listening. Let me defuse Barracks B and Medical Bay. 53 people walk free. Claire's voice was steady despite the hammering of her heart. In exchange, I stay in the command center. When your timer runs out, I die with my brother. You get your revenge. I pay for Kandahar. The team erupted. Cole grabbed her arm. Master Sergeant, no. Torres stepped forward. You can't. Washington shook his head. That's not a solution. Park looked like he might be sick. Claire ignored them, kept the radio keyed. Vincent, you wanted me to understand what you felt at Kandahar. Wanted me to feel helpless. Wanted me to know what it's like to watch people die because of my choices. I get it now. I understand. So let me pay the price. Let me trade my life for theirs. The silence stretched. Claire counted her heartbeats. 10, 20, 30. Then Vincent spoke, his voice different, softer, almost sad. You'd really do it? You'd die for them? I should have died at Kandahar. Claire closed her eyes. I've been living on borrowed time for 3 years. Let me make it mean something. Let me save the people I can save. That's all I'm asking. Claire, don't do this. Michael's voice broke into the channel. Don't you dare sacrifice yourself for me. This isn't about you, Michael. Claire opened her eyes. This is about 83 Marines who don't deserve to die because of my mistakes. If my life buys theirs, that's a trade I'll make. Vincent's voice returned. No deal. What? Claire's grip tightened on the radio. No deal, Vincent repeated. Your death doesn't balance the scales, Claire, because you're not the one who needs to die. I am. The words hung in the air like smoke. Claire's mind struggled to process them. What are you talking about? I'll give you access to the command center master circuit. Vincent's voice was steady now, matter of fact. You can defuse all 3 devices, save all 83 Marines, but the circuit is protected by a biometric lock. And that lock is keyed to an explosive collar around one person's neck inside the command center. Remove the collar, circuit stays locked. Everyone dies. Unlock the circuit, collar detonates. Person wearing it dies. You have to choose, Claire. Save everyone by killing one. Or save no one by refusing to choose. Claire felt the world tilt. Who's wearing the collar? Your brother. Michael's voice came through immediately. Claire, I volunteered. When Vincent offered this option, I volunteered to wear it. This is my base, my command, my responsibility. You stupid? Claire couldn't finish the sentence. Why would you do that? Because it's the right thing. Michael's response was simple. 82 lives for one. That's command math. Dad would have understood. Claire wanted to scream, wanted to throw the radio, wanted to turn back time to before Kandahar, before the divorce, before everything had broken. Instead, she forced herself to think, forced herself to analyze the problem like the EOD tech she was. Vincent, why the collar? Why not just let me defuse the circuit? Because at Kandahar, you chose protocol over family. Vincent's answer was immediate. Your gut told you to abort the mission, but protocol said proceed. You followed protocol and killed my family. Now I'm asking you to choose again. Follow your gut and kill your actual family. Let's see which you value more. Mission success or blood? Cole spoke quietly beside Claire. This is psychological torture. That's the point. Claire stared at the command center. Vincent doesn't just want me to suffer. He wants me to understand. Wants me to make the same impossible choice he made. Watch my brother die or let 83 people die. Either way, I live with the weight. So what do we do? Torres asked. Claire thought about the collar. Biometric lock. Keyed to Michael's heartbeat, presumably. Which meant she couldn't knock him out. Couldn't stop his heart. The collar had to stay on him, alive and conscious, or the circuit would lock and everyone would die. But collars had weaknesses. Commercial explosive collars were built for avalanche control, mine clearance, controlled demolitions. She'd trained on them 15 years ago. They used biometric sensors that monitored pulse. And those sensors had one critical flaw: magnetic interference. She pulled out her kit, started digging through equipment, looking for something her father had insisted she carry, something that had seemed obsolete years ago, something that might save Michael's life. There, at the bottom of the kit, her father's Gulf War-era field telephone magneto generator, a hand-cranked device that created electromagnetic pulses. Obsolete, outdated, the kind of tech Washington would have laughed at. Claire held it up. This creates a magnetic pulse. If I can position it near the collar, the pulse will interfere with the biometric sensor. Give me a window of 3, maybe 4 seconds where the sensor thinks the heartbeat stopped, but the collar hasn't registered the change yet. In that window, I can unlock the circuit before the failsafe engages. That's insane. Washington stared at the device. 3 seconds to unlock a military-grade circuit? I've done it in 2, Claire's voice carried certainty she didn't entirely feel. Fallujah, 2008, under sniper fire, with blood in my eyes. I can do this. What if the magnetic pulse triggers the collar instead of disrupting it? Torres raised the question they were all thinking. Then Michael dies and I've proven Vincent right about my judgment. Claire shouldered her pack. But it's the only play we have, the only third option, and I'm taking it. She started walking toward the command center. The team moved to follow. She turned, held up a hand. Cole, Torres, Washington. Take positions at Barracks B and Medical Bay. Be ready to defuse those devices the second I unlock the master circuit. Park, you're with me. I need someone watching my back while I work. Master Sergeant, I should be the one going with you. Cole's voice held no room for argument. No. Claire's response was final. You're the best at complex defusal. If something goes wrong, if I screw this up, I need you ready to save whoever you can save. Torres and Washington too. The 3 of you are backup. Park's with me because he's fast and he follows orders without questioning them. Park looked terrified but nodded. Yes, Master Sergeant. Claire moved toward the command center. Park followed 5 meters back, rifle ready, eyes scanning for threats that weren't coming. The real threat was the explosive collar around her brother's neck. The real threat was her own hands, shaking despite years of training. She reached the entrance, studied the pressure plate, saw the wireless transmitter, took out her tools and began the delicate work of bypassing the trigger without setting it off. Her radio crackled. Vincent's voice. "You're really going to try this?" "Yeah, Claire didn't stop working. I'm really going to try this." The magneto generator is 50 years old. The collar is current military spec. The magnetic pulse might not be strong enough. Then I'll find another way. Claire clipped a wire, tested voltage, moved to the next connection. "But I'm not giving up. Not on my brother, not on these Marines, and not on proving you wrong about me." "Wrong about what?" "Wrong about Kandahar." Claire finished bypassing the pressure plate. The door unlocked with a soft click. "I've spent 3 years thinking you were right, that I was negligent, that I killed those 11 Marines through poor judgment. But you know what? I'm done carrying that weight. I made a call with the information I had. The AI was wrong, the intelligence was faulty, and I did my job to the best of my ability. If that's not enough for you, that's your problem, not mine anymore." She pulled the door open. The command center interior was dim after the bright sunlight. 30 Marines stared at her with hollow eyes. And in the center of the room, sitting on a metal chair with an explosive collar around his neck, was Michael Hendricks. Their eyes met. 4 years of anger and hurt and blame hung between them like a physical thing. "Hey, little brother." Claire's voice came out steadier than she felt. "Hey, Claire." Michael's response was quiet. "Didn't expect you to actually come. Where else would I be?" She moved into the room. Park took position by the door, weapon ready. Claire approached Michael slowly, studying the collar. Standard military issue, LED display showing heartbeat, wireless connection to the master circuit panel on the far wall, and enough explosive to take Michael's head clean off. "This is a bad idea." Michael's voice held no fear, only resignation. "You should focus on defusing the other buildings." "Let me go." "Not happening." Claire pulled out the magneto generator, explained the plan. "Magnetic pulse? 3-second window. Unlock the circuit before fail-safe engages." 3 seconds. Michael almost smiled. "Think you can do it?" "I've done it in less." Claire set up the magneto near the collar, positioned it carefully. Every millimeter mattered. Too close and the pulse might trigger the explosive. Too far and the sensor wouldn't be disrupted. Michael watched her work. His voice was quiet when he spoke. "Claire, I'm sorry." Her hands paused. "For what?" "For Kandahar. For testifying against you. For blaming you when I should have been supporting you." Michael's eyes glistened. "I was angry and hurt, and I needed someone to blame. You were the easiest target. I'm sorry." Claire's throat tightened. "I'm sorry too, for not being there when you needed me, for letting my guilt push you away, for making you feel like you had to choose between me and the truth. We were both just trying to survive." Michael's voice cracked. "I just wish it hadn't cost us 3 years." Claire finished positioning the magneto, moved to the master circuit panel. It was complex but not impossible. Standard military encryption, biometric authentication required, and a timer counting down, 30 minutes remaining. "Michael, when I trigger the magneto, you're going to feel the pulse through the collar. Don't panic. Stay absolutely still. 3 seconds. That's all I need. And if you miss, then tell Dad I did my best." Claire's hand moved to the magneto crank. "Torres, Washington, you in position?" Torres' voice came through the radio. "Barracks B, ready." Washington followed. "Medical Bay, ready." Vincent's voice cut in. "This is your last chance to back out, Claire. You can walk away right now. Let the timer run. Everyone dies, but you don't have to be the one who made the choice." "I'm not walking away." Claire gripped the magneto crank. "And Vincent, I need you to know something. What happened at Kandahar wasn't your fault or mine. It was the system, the AI, the intelligence, the whole machine that puts soldiers in impossible positions and then blames them when things go wrong. You've been carrying guilt that doesn't belong to you, just like I have." Silence on the radio, then Vincent's voice, barely audible. "I falsified the AI data at Kandahar." The words hit like a physical blow. Claire's hand froze on the crank. "What?" "The AI analysis." Vincent's voice was breaking. "I was the EOD tech who verified it. I saw evidence of multiple IEDs, but I buried it. I believed in the technology, believed AI was better than human judgment. I wanted to prove it. So I falsified the confidence rating, changed it from 60% to 83%. Made you think the entrance was safe. I killed those 11 Marines, not you. Me." The room spun. Claire gripped the table for support. Michael stared at her, his face pale. Park stood frozen by the door. And on the radio, Vincent Drake was confessing to the crime that had destroyed her life. You testified against me. Claire could barely form the words. You said I was negligent, because I couldn't face what I'd done. Vincent's voice was raw with pain. I destroyed your career, your marriage, your relationship with your brother, because I was too coward to admit the truth. And your brother testified against you because he believed me, because I lied to everyone. Michael's face had gone from pale to gray. Vincent, you son of a bitch. You let me blame her. Let me hate her. For 3 years. I'm sorry. Vincent's voice was barely a whisper. I'm so sorry. That's why I brought you both here. Not for revenge, for confession, for truth. Claire, those 11 deaths weren't your fault. They were mine, and I've been living with it every day since. The phantom pain in my legs, the nightmares, the guilt. I let you take the fall because I couldn't carry it myself. Claire's hands were shaking. She looked at Michael, saw the same shock reflected in his face. 3 years. 3 years of blame and anger and destroyed relationship. All because Vincent couldn't admit his mistake. Her radio crackled one more time. Vincent's voice. I'm giving you the truth. That's all I can give. Those 83 Marines are alive if you unlock that circuit. Your brother's alive if you do it right. The past is done, but you can still save the future. I'm sorry, Claire, for everything. Then there was a sound in the distance. Muffled. Final. An explosion maybe 3 kilometers away. Claire knew what it meant before Vincent's radio went dead. He killed himself. Michael's voice was hollow. He just confessed and killed himself. Claire stood motionless, tried to process everything. Vincent's confession, her vindication, Michael's shock, the timer counting down. 28 minutes remaining. Cole's voice came through. Master Sergeant, we heard everything. I'm sorry. But that timer's still running. Claire looked at the magneto, looked at Michael, looked at her hands. They'd stopped shaking. For the first time in 3 years, her hands were perfectly steady. She keyed the radio. Torres, Washington, be ready, on my mark. You have 30 seconds to defuse your devices. Park, watch that door. Michael, trust me. Always have. Michael's voice was quiet. Just took me too long to remember it. Claire cranked the magneto. The pulse was invisible, but she felt it in her teeth. Felt it in the air. Felt it disrupt the electromagnetic field around Michael's collar. The LED display flickered. She lunged for the master circuit panel. Her hands flew across the controls. Bypass authentication. Override encryption. Unlock master circuit. 1 second, 2 seconds, 2.5 seconds. The circuit panel went green. The locks disengaged. Torres, Washington, now! Claire barked into the radio. On it! Torres' voice came back. Device disarmed, 30 seconds. Medical bay clear. Washington followed. All devices neutralized. Claire turned to Michael, approached the collar carefully. It was still active, still monitoring his heartbeat, but the master circuit was unlocked. She pulled out her tools, began the delicate work of disarming an explosive device wrapped around her brother's throat. Michael sat perfectly still, didn't speak, didn't move, just trusted his sister's hands the way he should have trusted them 3 years ago. 7 minutes of the most careful wire work Claire had ever done. 7 minutes of sweating bullets while 30 Marines watched in silence. 7 minutes of proving that experience and training and steady hands could beat any AI, any technology, any system that tried to reduce human beings to numbers and probabilities. The collar unlocked, fell into Claire's hands. She set it gently on the floor, stepped back. Michael stood slowly, touched his neck where the collar had been, looked at his sister. And for the first time in 3 years, neither of them looked away. The silence broke when Cole's voice came through the radio. All buildings secure, all personnel accounted, 83 Marines, 0 casualties. Outside, the sun was setting. The desert turned gold. And in the command center of Firebase Vulture, 2 siblings who'd been broken by lies finally had the truth that might let them heal. Claire picked up her father's wire cutters. The metal was warm from her hands. She thought about the old man who'd carried these through Gulf War, who'd taught her that the job doesn't care about your feelings, who'd understood that command meant impossible choices and living with the weight. But he'd also taught her something else, something she'd forgotten until today. That sometimes the third option isn't about being clever or finding a loophole. Sometimes the third option is simply refusing to accept that anyone has to die. Fighting for every life. Trusting your hands and your training and the people beside you. Michael stepped forward, put his hand on her shoulder. Thank you. That's what family does. Claire's voice was rough. We fight for each other, even when we're angry, even when we're broken. We don't give up. Outside, the team was gathering. 83 Marines emerging from their buildings, blinking in the fading light. Free, alive, whole. Vincent Drake had wanted to teach Claire a lesson, had wanted to make her understand the weight of command, the burden of impossible choices, the cost of lives that depend on your decisions. He'd succeeded, but not in the way he'd intended. Because Claire had learned that the weight of command wasn't just about making hard choices. It was about refusing to accept that hard choices were the only options. It was about trusting the people beside you, about using every skill and every tool and every ounce of experience to find the third way when everyone said there wasn't one. The sunset painted the firebase in shades of amber and rose. Somewhere in the desert, Vincent Drake's body was cooling. A man who'd carried too much weight for too long. A man who'd made mistakes and couldn't forgive himself. A man who'd given his life to speak the truth that might save two people he'd hurt. Claire stood beside her brother and watched the sun go down. Tomorrow would bring questions, debriefings, investigations, the machinery of military justice grinding through Vincent's confession and its implications. But tonight, 83 Marines were breathing, 2 siblings were talking, and a woman who'd spent 3 years believing she was broken had learned that sometimes broken things could be put back together. Not the same, never the same, but maybe, possibly, stronger in the places where they'd cracked. The wire cutters in her hand caught the last light of day. Her father's legacy, her tool, her proof that sometimes old-school methods and steady hands and refusing to give up were enough. Park approached carefully. Master Sergeant, command's on the radio. They want a sit rep. Tell them mission accomplished. Claire's voice was steady. All personnel safe, all devices neutralized. Siege ended. We're ready for extraction. Park hesitated. What about Staff Sergeant Drake? Tell them he's at rest. Claire looked toward the horizon where Vincent had made his final choice, and that he died making sure the truth came out. However else history judges him, he gets that much. The radio chatter faded. The team secured the perimeter, and Claire Hendricks stood with her brother and watched the desert night claim Firebase Vulture. Somewhere above them, stars were appearing. The same stars her father had seen in Gulf War. The same stars that looked down on every battlefield and every choice and every soldier who'd ever carried weight too heavy to bear alone. But tonight, for the first time in 3 years, Claire wasn't carrying it alone anymore. The helicopter arrived at dawn. Claire Hendricks stood in the Firebase Vulture compound yard, watching the CH-47 Chinook descend through morning light that turned the rotor wash into liquid gold. 83 Marines waited behind her in formation. Tired, rattled, alive. Every single one of them breathing because she'd refused to accept that anyone had to die. Beside her, Michael stood in his dusty uniform, the red marks from the explosive collar still visible on his neck. They hadn't talked much since she'd removed it, hadn't needed to. Some conversations happened in silence, in the space between breaths, in the simple fact of standing together after 3 years of standing apart. Cole approached from the command center, tablet in hand. Master Sergeant, command wants a full debrief. They're sending an investigation team. Should be here by 1300 hours. Understood. Claire didn't take her eyes off the helicopter. Tell them we'll be ready. They're also asking about Staff Sergeant Drake. Cole's voice dropped, specifically about his location. Claire had spent the night thinking about Vincent, about his confession, about the 3 years she'd carried guilt that wasn't hers, about a man so broken by his own mistakes that he'd built an elaborate trap just to speak the truth he couldn't say in any other way. Send a recovery team to grid coordinates November 7-3. She pulled out her notebook, wrote down the numbers. That's where the explosion originated. That's where they'll find him. Cole took the notebook, looked at the coordinates, looked at Claire. For what it's worth, Master Sergeant, I don't think he was evil. Just broken. Broken people still make choices. Claire's voice carried no anger, only exhaustion. He chose to confess, chose to give me back the truth, chose to so the weight would stop. I can't forgive what he did, but I understand why he did it. The helicopter touched down. Medics spilled out, moving toward the wounded from medical bay. The evacuation would take hours. 3 trips minimum to get everyone out. Priority 1 was the injured. Priority 2 was personnel. Priority 3 was equipment and evidence. Claire would be on the last bird out. That's how it worked. Commander stayed until everyone else was safe. Michael moved beside her. Strange calling you, Commander. I'm not the commander. Claire gestured to him. You are. This is your base. Was my base. Michael's voice held something like relief. After what happened here, after Vincent, after all of it, I think my command days are numbered. They'll want someone to blame for the security failure. Someone who let a medically retired staff sergeant plant bombs for 6 months without anyone noticing. That's not your fault. Tell that to the inquiry board. Michael almost smiled. But honestly, I don't care anymore. I got 83 Marines home alive. That's all that matters. Everything else is just noise. They stood in silence watching the medics work. Professional, efficient, loading stretchers, checking vitals. The machinery of military medicine doing what it did best. Torres approached from the perimeter. Master Sergeant, we've secured all the devices, mapped them, photographed them. EOD follow-up team can dismantle them safely once we're clear. Good work, Sergeant. Claire pulled out her father's wire cutters, examined them in the morning light. How many did we count total? 43. Just like Vincent said. Torres consulted her notebook. Though something's bothering me, we only accounted for the devices blocking access routes. But Vincent had 6 months here. That's a lot of time, a lot of opportunity. What if there are more we didn't find? Claire had been thinking the same thing. Vincent was thorough, methodical. Every device they'd found had been marked with yellow ribbons. Visible, meant to be discovered. But what if that was the point? What if the visible devices were distraction from something else? Show me the device map. Claire held out her hand. Torres pulled up the digital map on her tablet, showed the Firebase layout with red dots marking each IED location. The pattern was clear. Perimeter devices, access route devices, building entrance devices, everything designed to control movement, to force choices, to test Claire's decision-making. But there was one building Vincent hadn't touched, the maintenance facility on the east side. Old, rarely used, easy to overlook. Why didn't he rig that building? Claire pointed to it on the map. Maybe he ran out of materials, Torres suggested. Or maybe he figured no one would try to access it during a siege. Or maybe that's exactly where he put something he didn't want us to find. Claire handed back the tablet. Get Washington and Park. We're doing a sweep of that building before we evacuate. Master Sergeant, the recovery team needs to do that. Cole's objection was immediate. You've been awake for 36 hours. You're exhausted. Let fresh eyes handle it. Fresh eyes don't know Vincent's patterns. Claire was already walking toward the maintenance facility. I trained him. Worked with him for 2 years. If he hid something, I'll recognize his signature. The maintenance facility was a low concrete structure, half buried against the desert heat. The door was unlocked. No yellow ribbon, no obvious device. Claire approached carefully anyway, scanning the ground for disturbances, the door frame for trip wires, the hinges for pressure releases. Nothing. She pushed the door open. The interior was dark and musty. Shelves lined the walls, holding supplies that hadn't been touched in years. Spare parts, old equipment, the kind of stuff every military base accumulated and forgot about. Washington and Park entered behind her, flashlights cutting through the gloom. Torres stayed outside, watching their backs. Spread out. Claire moved deeper into the building. Look for anything that doesn't belong. Fresh disturbance. Recent activity. Vincent's signature. They searched in silence. Minutes stretched. Claire's eyes adjusted to the dim light. She noticed dust patterns on the shelves. Noticed which boxes had been moved recently. Noticed a trail leading toward the back of the building where a metal door marked basement access hung partially open. Basements in desert installations were rare. Water table issues, structural concerns. But Firebase Vulture was old enough to have been built before modern regulations. Claire descended the metal stairs. Each step echoed. The basement opened into a larger space than she'd expected. Generator equipment, old communications gear, and in the center of the room, sitting on a workbench like an offering, a large metal device covered with a tarp. She pulled the tarp away. Her blood went cold. VBED, vehicle-borne improvised explosive device, 500 pounds of ANFO, ammonium nitrate fuel oil, The same mixture that had destroyed the Oklahoma City Federal Building. Enough explosive to level the entire maintenance facility and damage every building within 200 meters. Get out. Claire's command was immediate. Everyone out now. The team scrambled up the stairs. Claire followed, her mind already processing what she'd seen. This wasn't like Vincent's other devices. This wasn't a test. This wasn't psychology. This was real. This was meant to kill. Outside, she pulled Cole aside. That building is rigged with a massive VBIED, 500 pounds minimum. We need to evacuate everyone to minimum safe distance. Now. Cole's face went pale. The helicopter is loading wounded. If we evacuate the compound, we won't have time to get them clear before... Before what? Claire checked her watch. The device didn't have a visible timer from what I saw, but Vincent wouldn't have left it unarmed. Washington had his tablet out, pulling up building schematics. Master Sergeant, if that device detonates, blast radius is 200 meters minimum. Pressure wave extends to 400. Anyone in those buildings dies. How long to evacuate? Claire asked. Wounded need 40 minutes minimum to load and clear. Personnel another 30. We're talking over an hour. Cole ran the numbers. If that device has a timer, we don't know how much time we have. Then I need to examine it, figure out what we're dealing with. Claire started back toward the maintenance facility. Michael grabbed her arm. Claire, no. Send in the robot. Send in someone else. You've already defused enough devices for a lifetime. Robot controls are still jammed. Claire pulled free gently. And there is no one else. I'm the senior EOD tech on site. This is my job. You've done your decade. You saved everyone. Michael's grip tightened. Don't throw that away trying to be a hero. I'm not trying to be a hero, Claire met his eyes. I'm trying to make sure everyone gets home. That includes you. She walked back into the maintenance facility before he could argue further. Down the metal stairs, into the basement where 500 pounds of explosive waited with whatever timer Vincent had set. Claire approached the device slowly, pulled out her flashlight, examined it from every angle. The construction was professional. Military-grade det cord, commercial blasting caps. The ANFO mixture was packed into metal containers welded together, and running from the containers were wires leading to a control box. She photographed everything with her phone, sent the images to Torres. Torres, run these through the database. See if you can identify the timer type. On it, Torres' voice came back within minutes. Master Sergeant, that's a dual redundancy timer. Primary countdown plus backup pressure sensor. If you disturb the device, backup triggers. You have to defuse both simultaneously. What's the primary showing? Claire moved closer, found the LED display partially hidden beneath the wiring. Her stomach dropped. 18 hours. 18 hours until detonation. More than enough time to evacuate. Except Vincent wouldn't have made it that simple. There had to be something else. Some other element she was missing. She circled the device, looking for secondary components. Additional triggers. The detail that would turn 18 hours into 18 minutes. And then she saw it. A second timer, smaller, hidden behind the primary, counting down much faster. 6 hours. Torres, we have a problem. Claire's voice was steady despite the adrenaline. There's a secondary timer, 6 hours, 1800 hours detonation. That's not enough time to evacuate everyone. Cole's voice cut in. Wounded alone need an hour. What are our options? Claire studied both timers, studied the wiring, studied Vincent's work, and tried to think like he thought. This wasn't meant to kill her team. If he'd wanted that, he would have set a shorter fuse. 6 hours was enough time to find the device, enough time to attempt defusal, but not enough time to take shortcuts. This was his final test, not about whether she could defuse it, about whether she would take the time to do it right or rush the job and fail like she had at Kandahar. I can defuse it. Claire's voice carried certainty, but it's going to take time. I'm looking at minimum 4 hours of work, maybe 5. No shortcuts, no rushing. This has to be done perfectly or the backup triggers. That puts us cutting it close, Cole observed. If you run into problems, if something goes wrong, we won't have time to evacuate before the 6-hour timer expires. Then I won't run into problems. Claire set down her kit, started pulling out tools. Torres, Washington, I need you to prep the evacuation plan anyway. Wounded first, then personnel. Have them staged and ready to move. If something goes wrong with this defusal, I want everyone clear in under 30 minutes. What about you? Michael's voice came through. If you're still working when the timer gets close, what happens to you? Then you'll have one less thing to feel guilty about. Claire positioned her work light, started examining the primary timer. Now get off this channel. I need to concentrate. The radio went quiet. Claire was alone with 500 pounds of explosive and Vincent Drake's final lesson. She thought about his confession, thought about the falsified data at Kandahar, thought about 3 years of carrying guilt that belonged to someone else. Vincent had spent 6 months building this device, had salvaged components from somewhere, had placed it in the one building everyone would overlook, had given it dual timers specifically calibrated to create maximum pressure without making it impossible. He'd built this knowing she would find it, knowing she would attempt defusal, knowing it would test everything she'd learned. Claire began with the secondary timer, the 6-hour countdown. It was connected to the pressure sensor Torres had mentioned. Any significant movement would trigger it immediately. She had to stabilize the sensor first, make it think the device was stationary even while she worked. She pulled out a can of expanding foam, the kind used for stabilizing unstable ordnance, carefully injected it around the pressure sensor housing, waited for it to cure, tested the sensor response. Still active but dampened. Any vibration would be absorbed by the foam before reaching the sensor. 2 hours of work to neutralize one component. Her radio crackled. Cole checking in. How's it going? Slow, Claire wiped sweat from her forehead. This is the most sophisticated device I've ever seen. Vincent used every trick I taught him and added a few I didn't know he knew. Can you beat it? Ask me in 4 hours. She moved to the primary timer, the 18-hour countdown. This one was more straightforward. Standard military specification, commercial detonator. But the wiring was complex. Vincent had created multiple redundant circuits. Cut the wrong wire and the backup timer would trigger. She had to trace every connection, map every pathway, understand the entire system before she could start cutting. Another hour passed, then another. Claire's back ached from being hunched over the device. Her eyes burned from the flashlight glare. Her hands were steady, but her shoulders trembled with tension. Torres brought water and an energy bar, sat with her while she worked, didn't speak, just provided company. The kind of silent support that mattered more than words. The evacuation began at hour 4. Claire could hear the helicopter rotors, could hear the organized chaos of wounded being loaded, could hear her team making sure everyone got out. Michael's voice came through the radio. Last bird is loading. Wounded are clear. Personnel are boarding. You need to wrap this up. Claire was wrist-deep in wiring, tracing a circuit that looped through 3 different connection points. 2 hours remaining on the 6-hour timer. Almost there. Just need to verify the sequence. Claire, please. Michael's voice held strain. We're all waiting. Everyone's safe except you. Get on that helicopter. Can't. If I stop now, I lose my place in the sequence. Have to finish the trace. Claire's focus never wavered. Tell them to take off. I'll catch the next one. There is no next one. Michael's voice cracked. That's the last bird. Extraction is complete. If you're not on it, you're stuck here when that timer hits 0. Claire paused, looked at the timer, 1 hour 53 minutes, looked at the wiring still unmapped, looked at her tools spread around her. She could evacuate now, save herself. Let the device detonate and destroy an empty firebase. No casualties. Mission successful by any reasonable measure. But she would know she'd left a job unfinished, would know she'd walked away because it was safer, would know she'd let fear make her decision instead of training and discipline. Tell the helicopter to leave. Claire returned to the wiring. I'm finishing this. God damn it, Claire. Michael's anger was pure fear. You don't have to prove anything. You already saved everyone. You already beat Vincent's test. This isn't about Vincent anymore. Claire traced another wire, made a note. This is about me, about whether I trust myself, whether I believe in my own hands. I spent 3 years doubting every decision. Not anymore. I know what I'm doing, and I'm going to finish this job the right way. The silence on the radio lasted 30 seconds. Then Michael's voice, quiet. I'm staying with you. No. Claire's response was immediate. You're getting on that helicopter. Not without you. Michael's voice held the same stubborn determination she recognized in herself. You're my sister. If you're staying, I'm staying. Michael, don't be stupid. Runs in the family, apparently. Static, then Michael again. Helicopter's leaving. Just you and me, Claire. Like old times. We never had old times. You hate me, remember? Hated. Past tense. Michael's voice softened. Turns out I was hating the wrong person. I've got 3 years of apologies to make. Figured I'd start now by not abandoning you. Claire felt something break in her chest. Not painful, the opposite. Like pressure releasing, like weight lifting. She'd spent so long being alone with her guilt that she'd forgotten what it felt like to have someone beside her. Thank you. Her voice came out rough. Don't mention it. Just defuse the bomb so we can both go home. Claire returned to work with renewed focus. 1 hour, 40 minutes remaining. The circuit trace was nearly complete. She could see the pattern now. See how Vincent had designed the system. 3 primary wires, each controlling a different aspect. Power, trigger, detonation. She had to cut them in sequence. Wrong order and the backup would cascade. Her father's voice echoed in memory. When you don't know which wire, trust your hands. Feel for the heartbeat. Every device has one. Claire closed her eyes, placed her hand on the wiring bundle, felt the tiny vibrations. Electrical current flowing through copper. One wire pulsed slightly stronger. The heartbeat, the master feed. She opened her eyes, positioned her wire cutters. 1 hour, 20 minutes remaining. Cut. The primary timer stopped. LED display frozen at 1 hour, 19 minutes. But the secondary timer kept counting. Still active, still armed. Vincent's backup was independent. She'd known it would be. She moved to the secondary timer. This one was protected by an anti-tampering circuit. Touch it wrong and it would trigger immediately. She had to find the disable sequence, the code that would shut it down without setting it off. 45 minutes remaining. Her phone buzzed. Text message from Torres. Found something in Vincent's hideout. Encrypted files. One is labeled Claire Final Exam Answer Key. Should I try to decrypt? Claire's fingers paused over the wiring. An answer key. Vincent had left her instructions. A way out. A shortcut. She thought about Kandahar. Thought about trusting the AI analysis. Thought about taking the easy path and watching 11 people die because the easy path was wrong. No. Claire texted back. I don't want the answers. I want to earn this. She put the phone away, focused on the anti-tampering circuit, mapped its logic, understood its design, found the vulnerability Vincent had left because he was a teacher first and a trap builder second. 30 minutes remaining. Her hands moved with precision, bypassing the anti-tamper, isolating the trigger circuit, finding the disable code buried in the wiring pattern itself. The sequence was based on prime numbers. Vincent's favorite mathematical concept. He'd taught her about primes while they were pinned down in Ramadi, talking about math to stay calm while mortars fell around them. 15 minutes remaining. Claire entered the sequence. Wire by wire, cut by cut, building the code in copper and timing, prime numbers ascending, 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. The secondary timer stopped at 8 minutes 37 seconds. Both timers neutralized. Device disarmed. 500 pounds of explosive rendered safe. Claire sat back against the wall. Let her hands drop. Let the wire cutters fall. Let herself breathe for what felt like the first time in 6 hours. Her radio crackled. Michael's voice. Claire, talk to me. What's your status? Device neutralized. Claire's voice was steady despite everything. All timers stopped. Building is safe. We can call the helicopter back. The sound that came through the radio might have been laughter or crying or both. Copy that. Calling for pickup now. Michael paused. You scared the hell out of me. Join the club. Claire stood slowly, joints protesting. I scared myself. Outside, the sun was setting again. Another day in the desert. Another impossible task completed. Claire climbed the stairs from the basement, walked through the maintenance facility, stepped into evening light that painted everything gold. Michael was waiting, leaning against a wall, looking exhausted and relieved in equal measure. When he saw her, he straightened, started to salute, then stopped, changed it to something else, walked forward and hugged his sister for the first time in 3 years. Claire stood rigid for a moment, then her arms came up, hugged him back, let herself feel the connection she thought was broken forever. You're an idiot. Michael's voice was muffled against her shoulder. A brilliant, stubborn, impossible idiot. Learn from the best. Claire pulled back, looked at her brother, saw their father's eyes looking back. When did we stop being family? When I let anger matter more than truth. Michael's voice carried regret. When I testified against you instead of supporting you. When I chose blame over belief. I'm sorry, Claire, for all of it. I'm sorry, too, for letting the guilt push you away, for not fighting to keep us together. They stood in the golden light, two siblings who'd been broken by lies and betrayal, finding their way back to each other through truth and wire cutters and refusing to give up. The helicopter appeared on the horizon, coming back for the two people who'd stayed behind, who'd chosen to face the bomb together rather than run separately. Claire picked up her kit, her father's wire cutters gleaming in the sunset. She thought about the old man who'd carried these through Gulf War, who'd taught her about duty and honor and the weight of command, who'd understood that sometimes the hardest choice was simply staying, not running, not giving up, just staying and doing the work. The helicopter landed, rotor wash kicked up dust. Michael climbed aboard first, turned, offered his hand. Claire took it, let her brother pull her up into safety. As the aircraft lifted into the evening sky, Firebase Vulture fell away beneath them. Empty now, all devices neutralized, all personnel safe, all debts paid. But Claire knew the real work was just beginning. Vincent's confession would trigger investigations. Questions about how the AI data had been falsified. Questions about who else knew. Questions about the system that let one man's lies destroy careers and relationships and lives. Tomorrow would bring all of that. Tonight, she sat beside her brother and watched the desert disappear beneath them. Two people who'd been lost, finding their way back. Not to what they were, that was gone, but to what they might become. The helicopter crew chief handed them both water bottles, gave them blankets against the chill of altitude. Didn't ask questions. Didn't need to. The exhaustion and relief on their faces told the whole story. Claire drank the water, felt it cold against her throat, felt her body starting to understand that the danger was over, that she'd survived, that everyone had survived. 0 casualties, 83 Marines home safe, 1 brother reconciled, 1 truth revealed. Vincent Drake's final gift had been confession. His final test had been trust. Trust that Claire had learned. Trust that she could find the third option when everyone said there wasn't one. Trust that steady hands and patient work could beat any device ever built. She'd passed, not because she was brilliant, not because she was lucky, but because she'd refused to rush, refused to take shortcuts, refused to let fear or guilt make her decisions. The stars were appearing now. Same stars that had watched over her father in Gulf War. Same stars that looked down on every battlefield and every choice and every person who carried weight too heavy to bear alone. But tonight, Claire wasn't carrying it alone. Michael sat beside her. The team was safe, and somewhere ahead, back at base, there would be questions to answer and a future to build. The helicopter flew on through darkening sky, carrying 2 siblings toward whatever came next, carrying the truth that would change how the military thought about AI and human judgment and the cost of trusting machines over people. Claire closed her eyes, let herself rest. Tomorrow would demand everything from her. But tonight, for just a few hours, she could let the weight drop, could let someone else carry it, could simply be a woman who'd done her job and brought everyone home alive. The wire cutters in her kit bag gleamed in the cabin's red light. Her father's legacy, her tool, her proof that sometimes the old ways were the best ways. That experience mattered. That human judgment, flawed and uncertain as it might be, was still the most powerful tool in any kit. The helicopter droned on into night, and Claire Hendricks, Master Sergeant, United States Marine Corps, finally allowed herself to believe what Vincent's confession had given her. She wasn't broken. She never had been. She'd just been carrying someone else's guilt for too long. Now, with the truth revealed and her brother beside her, she could finally let it go. The rest could wait for tomorrow. 2 weeks after Firebase Vulture, Claire Hendricks stood before a tribunal of flag officers in a conference room that smelled like polished wood and old decisions. Sunlight filtered through high windows, painting stripes across the long table where 7 admirals and generals sat with folders thick enough to contain entire careers. Hers among them. She wore her dress uniform. Ribbons gleamed on her chest, each one a story, each one a scar. Her hands rested at her sides, steady despite the weight of what came next. The room was silent except for the hum of air conditioning and the rustle of papers. To her left sat Michael, also in dress uniform, called as witness. To her right, Cole stood at attention, along with Torres and Washington. The team that had walked through Firebase Vulture and brought 83 Marines home alive. Admiral Patricia Chen, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, opened the session. Master Sergeant Claire Hendricks, This tribunal has been convened to review the events of Firebase Vulture. Additionally, we are examining new evidence regarding the Kandahar incident of 2019. Evidence that has come to light through the confession of Staff Sergeant Vincent Drake before his death. Claire stood straighter, waited. Let them speak first. Chen continued. Staff Sergeant Drake left extensive documentation, encrypted files, video testimony, physical evidence, all of it pointing to deliberate falsification of AI threat analysis data prior to the Kandahar operation, data that led to the deaths of 11 Marines. She paused, let the words settle like stones in water. The evidence indicates you were not negligent, Master Sergeant. You were given false information by a subordinate who manipulated the system to prove a point about artificial intelligence versus human judgment. The original inquiry's findings were based on incomplete information. This tribunal is here to correct that record. Claire's throat tightened. 3 years. 3 years of carrying guilt that wasn't hers. 3 years of believing she'd failed. 3 years of her brother's anger and her own doubt and the bottle that never quite filled the emptiness. Now, in a room full of flag officers, the truth was being spoken aloud. Official. On record. Real. General Marcus Webb, Army, 4 stars, leaned forward. Master Sergeant, this tribunal has reviewed your actions at Firebase Vulture. Your decision to disobey Captain Hendricks' direct order to stand down. Your multiple device defusals under extreme time pressure. Your refusal to evacuate when ordered. Your ultimate success in saving all 83 personnel with 0 casualties. He paused, looked at her with eyes that had seen their own share of impossible choices. By regulation, you should be court-martialed for insubordination. By any measure of common sense, you should be decorated for heroism. This tribunal has wrestled with that contradiction for 2 weeks. We'd like to hear your perspective. Why did you disobey orders? Claire thought about her answer, thought about all the ways she could frame it. Political answers, safe answers, answers that would please the people holding her career in their hands. Then she thought about her father, about wire cutters and Gulf War, and the lesson he'd taught her. Tell the truth even when it costs. Sir, I disobeyed orders because the orders were wrong. Claire's voice carried clearly. My brother ordered me to stand down because he believed I was negligent at Kandahar. He believed I would get more people killed. But I knew the truth. I knew I had the training and experience to save those Marines. So I made a choice. Disobey one order to follow a higher one. The order to preserve life. To bring everyone home. That's the oath I took. That's the job I signed up for. General Webb made a note, and if you'd failed, if your disobedience had resulted in casualties, then I would have deserved court-martial. Claire met his eyes without flinching. Command means accepting the consequences of your decisions. I made mine with full knowledge of what it would cost if I was wrong. I'm standing here because I was right, but I would have stood here even if I'd been wrong and accepted whatever punishment came. The room was quiet. Admirals and generals looking at a master sergeant who just told them that sometimes regulations mattered less than lives, that sometimes the right choice meant breaking the rules. Admiral Chen spoke again. Staff Sergeant Drake's confession raises systemic questions about how AI analysis is verified, about how much trust we place in technology versus trained personnel, about what happens when those systems fail. Master Sergeant, you've spent 20 years in EOD. You've worked with the evolution from manual defusal to robotic assistance to AI threat analysis. What's your assessment? Claire chose her words carefully. This was bigger than her, bigger than Firebase Vulture. This was about every EOD tech in every theater. Every person who had to decide whether to trust the machine or trust their hands. Ma'am, AI is a tool, like a robot, like a multimeter, like wire cutters. Claire pulled her father's old cutters from her pocket, held them up. These are 50 years old. Gulf War era. They saved my life at Firebase Vulture when all our modern equipment was jammed. They worked because they're simple, because they don't need software or batteries or wireless connection. They just need hands that know how to use them. She set them on the table. AI should augment human judgment, not replace it. At Kandahar, we trusted AI over experience. At Firebase Vulture, I trusted experience over AI. Both approaches can work, but the final authority should always be the person in the field, the one with training and stakes and skin in the game. Because AI doesn't bleed when it's wrong. It doesn't carry the weight. It doesn't stand here answering for its choices. We do. General Webb leaned back. You're advocating for human override authority. I'm advocating for hybrid command. Claire's voice grew stronger. Use AI for analysis. Use robots for reconnaissance. Use every tool we have. But give the final decision to trained personnel. Trust their judgment. Support them when they override the machine. And when things go wrong, investigate the system, not just the person. What happened at Kandahar was system failure, not human failure. Vincent manipulated the data. The verification process failed. The chain of command failed. I was the convenient scapegoat. But putting me in training duty didn't fix the problem. It just hid it. Until Firebase Vulture proved what happens when someone has to choose between protocol and people. The tribunal members exchanged glances, silent communication passing between them. Then Admiral Chen gathered her papers, straightened them, looked at Claire with something like respect. Master Sergeant Hendricks, this tribunal finds as follows. 1. You are fully exonerated for the Kandahar incident. All prior findings of negligence are struck from your record. 2. Your actions at Firebase Vulture, while technically insubordinate, resulted in the preservation of 83 lives through exceptional judgment and skill. No disciplinary action will be taken. 3. You are hereby promoted to Sergeant Major, effective immediately. Claire's breath caught. Sergeant Major, the highest enlisted rank, a position she'd never imagined reaching after Kandahar. Chen continued, additionally, you are offered command of a new program, Joint Human AI Integration Task Force. Your mandate will be to develop hybrid protocols for all EOD operations, training programs that emphasize human judgment as primary, AI as support. You would train the next generation of EOD technicians in the philosophy you have just described. The Admiral paused. We're calling it the Hendricks Doctrine, human authority over machine analysis. We'd like you to lead its implementation. Claire looked at the wire cutters on the table, looked at Michael, who was trying not to smile, looked at her team, who trusted her when she barely trusted herself. Sergeant Major, a new program, a chance to make sure what happened to her never happened to anyone else. A chance to teach, to lead, to turn 3 years of pain into something that mattered. I accept, ma'am, but on one condition. Admiral Chen raised an eyebrow. You're negotiating with a tribunal? Requesting, ma'am. Claire kept her voice respectful but firm. I want Staff Sergeant Vincent Drake's daughter as my first trainee. She deserves to know her father's full story. Not just the tragedy, the brilliance too. He was one of the best EOD techs I ever worked with. His daughter should have the chance to carry that forward. Chen consulted with the other officers. Brief whispers, nods, then back to Claire. Request granted. Sergeant Major Drake will be assigned to your program upon completion of basic EOD school. One more thing, ma'am. Claire pushed further. Captain Michael Hendricks should be my executive officer. He understands the human cost of bad intelligence. He understands what happens when protocol trumps judgment. And he's my brother. We work well together. Michael's head snapped toward her. Claire, I can't. I'm facing my own inquiry for the security failures at Firebase Vulture, which is exactly why you're perfect for this. Claire met his eyes. You know what happens when systems fail? When someone plants bombs for 6 months and no one notices. We need that perspective. Need someone who's seen both sides. Command and consequence. Admiral Chen looked at Michael. Captain Hendricks, you're acceptable for the position contingent on your inquiry results, which for the record are likely to exonerate you. Drake was a professional who exploited known vulnerabilities. No commander could have reasonably prevented his actions. The tribunal concluded with more briefings, more paperwork, more details about the new program. But Claire barely heard it. She was thinking about Vincent, about how his final confession had given her back everything he'd taken. Career, brother, peace. Outside the Pentagon, Michael waited while she changed into utilities. When she emerged, he was leaning against a concrete barrier, watching traffic flow past. The afternoon sun turned everything golden. Washington, D.C. in summer heat that reminded her of the desert. They walked together without speaking, found a bench beneath an oak tree, sat in the kind of comfortable silence that siblings share when words aren't necessary. Finally, Michael spoke. 3 years. I wasted 3 years being angry at you for something you didn't do. And I wasted 3 years believing you were right to be angry. Claire watched the traffic. We both lost time. Can't get it back. Can we start over? Claire shook her head. No, starting over means pretending the last 3 years didn't happen. I don't want to pretend. She turned to face him. I want to start forward, acknowledge what happened, learn from it, build something new. But we can't do that if we're trying to reclaim what we lost. Start forward. Michael tested the words. I like that. They sat longer. Eventually, Michael pulled out his phone, showed Claire a photo. Sarah Drake, Vincent's daughter, 22 years old, bright eyes, her father's determination visible in the set of her jaw. She requested information about him. Michael's voice was quiet. The real story, not the sanitized version. I sent her the full tribunal report. His confession, his brilliance, his mistakes, everything. How'd she take it? She cried. Then she asked how to apply to EOD school. Michael put the phone away. She wants to finish what he started, understand what drove him, make sure his death meant something. Claire thought about that, about generational wounds and healing, about children carrying their parents' weight until someone teaches them to set it down. I'll make sure she learns. Claire's voice was firm. I'll teach her everything Vincent taught me, and I'll make sure she knows the difference between carrying legacy and carrying guilt. That's all any of us can do. Michael stood, offered his hand. Claire took it. Let her brother pull her up. They started walking back toward the Pentagon parking lot. When they reached Michael's car, he paused. Dad would have been proud of both of us, of how we came back from this. Claire pulled out the wire cutters, held them to the light. He left us tools, literally and figuratively. We just had to remember how to use them. 3 months later, Claire stood at the front of a classroom at Marine Corps Base Quantico. 30 students sat before her. Mixed ages, mixed backgrounds, all of them wanting to learn EOD, all of them believing technology would save them. She held up the wire cutters. Let the silence build. My father carried these in Gulf War. She let the words settle. He defused 17 devices with them, saved hundreds of lives. And he taught me that the most important tool you carry isn't in your kit, it's between your ears. A hand went up. Lance Corporal Ramirez, young and eager. Sergeant Major, we have AI analysis now. Robots. Tech that your father never had. Why learn the old methods? Because technology fails, Marine. Claire set the wire cutters down. And when it does, you need to know what your hands can do. I'm not teaching you to distrust technology. I'm teaching you to use it properly. As support, not replacement. As tool, not master. She pulled up a presentation, showed photos from Firebase Vulture. The devices, the yellow ribbons, the empty compound. 3 months ago, 83 Marines were trapped in a siege. The attacker was Staff Sergeant Vincent Drake, one of the best EOD techs I ever trained. He spent 6 months building a test. 43 devices designed not to kill, but to force impossible choices. She clicked through images, showed the collar around Michael's neck, showed the VBIED in the basement, showed the defusal in progress. I brought them all home. Not because I'm smarter than you, not because I'm lucky, but because I trusted my training over technology. Because I took the time to do things right instead of fast. Because I remembered what my father taught me. That the job doesn't care about your feelings or your fear or your need to prove anything. The job just needs doing. In the back of the classroom, a young woman sat with her notebook open. Sarah Drake, Vincent's daughter, 22 years old. Eyes that held her father's intensity and her own determination to understand. Claire met her gaze, held it, saw recognition pass between them. Teacher and student. 2 people connected by tragedy and bound by the choice to make it mean something. After class, Sarah approached. Her voice was quiet but steady. Sergeant Major, thank you for letting me be here. Your father was brilliant. Claire's response was immediate. He made terrible choices, but he was one of the best I knew. You have a right to learn what he could teach, to carry forward the skills, not the guilt. Sarah's eyes glistened. He told me once that EOD was about making choices under pressure, that the worst choice was not choosing at all. He was right about that. Claire picked up the wire cutters. He was right about a lot of things. He just forgot to apply his own lessons when it mattered most. Don't make his mistake. I won't. Sarah straightened. I'm here to learn, to be better than he was, to make sure his death wasn't wasted. Then you're in the right place. Claire handed her the wire cutters. Here, feel the weight. These saved my life. They'll save yours if you learn to trust them. Sarah held the cutters like they were sacred, turned them over, studied them, then handed them back. Thank you for showing me. For not pretending my father was a monster or a hero, just human. Just human, Claire repeated. That's all any of us are. We make choices, we live with them, and if we're lucky, we learn from them. That evening, Claire drove to Arlington National Cemetery. The sun was setting, long shadows stretched between white headstones that marched in perfect rows. She found her father's grave easily. Had walked this path so many times, the route was muscle memory. Sergeant Major Robert Hendricks, United States Marine Corps. Gulf War. The dates carved in stone. The grass around it perfectly maintained. Claire knelt, placed the wire cutters on the headstone. Beside them, she set a small urn. Vincent Drake's ashes. His daughter had asked Claire to bring them, to let Vincent rest near the man who'd trained him, near the legacy he tried to honor and then betrayed and finally died trying to restore. Hey, Dad. Claire's voice was quiet. Been a while since I visited. Been busy. She sat on the grass, let her back rest against the headstone, watched the sun paint the cemetery in shades of amber and rose. I made Sergeant Major. Took me long enough. But I got here. Michael's my XO now. We're running a new program, teaching the next generation that humans matter more than machines. That judgment can't be downloaded. That experience has value even when it's not digital. The wind moved through the trees, carried the scent of cut grass and old memories. Vincent Drake died 3 months ago. Killed himself after confessing he's the one who falsified the Kandahar data. 3 years I spent thinking I failed. 3 years Michael spent hating me. All because Vincent couldn't admit his mistake. Claire pulled her knees up, wrapped her arms around them. But here's the thing, Dad. He gave it back at the end, all of it. The truth, the vindication, my brother, he built an elaborate trap just to force me to understand what he went through. To make me choose. To prove I'd learned. She smiled through sudden tears. And I did learn. Learn that the wire doesn't care about protocol or AI or what some officer thinks should happen. It only cares about the hands holding the cutters. Your hands taught my hands. Now my hands are teaching Sarah Drake's hands. Vincent's daughter, she's got his intensity, his drive. But she's got something he lost. She's got humility. No, she doesn't have all the answers. The sun touched the horizon, Arlington glowed. I'm teaching 30 Marines, showing them that old tools still work, that patient work beats fast work, that the third option exists if you're willing to look for it. And I'm doing it because you taught me. Because these wire cutters you carried through desert operations and jungles saved 83 lives in the California desert. Claire stood, touched the headstone, felt the stone warm from the day's heat. Michael says hi. Says he's sorry he didn't visit more. Says he understands now what you tried to teach us. That command means impossible choices. That family matters more than anger. That starting forward is better than trying to reclaim the past. She picked up the wire cutters, held them to the dying light. The metal gleamed. I'm keeping these. Hope you don't mind. They're part of the curriculum now. Every student gets to hold them, gets to feel the weight, gets to understand that 50-year-old tools can still save lives if the hands using them remember their training. The sun dropped below the horizon. Twilight claimed the cemetery. Stars began appearing. The same stars that had watched over Gulf War and Iraq and Afghanistan, and every battlefield where men and women had made choices and lived with the weight. Rest easy, Dad. Claire stepped back from the grave. Your lessons are still saving lives. Your tools are still working. And your daughter's making sure your legacy is about the good you did, not the mistakes you made. That's all any of us can hope for. She walked back through the rows of headstones, past names she didn't know and stories she'd never hear, past the evidence of service and sacrifice and the cost of carrying the weight. But tonight, for the first time in 3 years, she wasn't carrying it alone. Michael was waiting in the parking lot. Her team believed in her. 30 students were learning from her. And Sarah Drake was choosing to honor her father by being better than his mistakes. Claire reached the parking lot. Michael leaned against her car, scrolling through his phone. He looked up when she approached. You good? Yeah. Claire unlocked the car. I'm good. They drove back to Quantico in comfortable silence. The radio played quietly, classic rock that reminded them both of their father. Songs he'd sung while working on cars in the garage, teaching them about engines and life and how to fix things that seemed broken. The Marine Corps Mountain Warfare Training Center appeared on the horizon, lights glowing against the darkening sky. Home. Not the home they'd grown up in, but the home they'd chosen, the place where they'd rebuild what had been broken. Claire parked outside the BOQ, Bachelor Officer Quarters. the temporary housing that had become permanent. Michael walked her to the door. Sarah wants to have dinner. Michael's voice was casual. Tomorrow night, says she wants to hear stories about her dad, the real ones, not the sanitized version. I can do that. Claire pulled out her keys. We'll tell her about Ramadi, about how he kept everyone calm under mortar fire by explaining prime number theory, about how he marked safe paths with yellow ribbons, about how he taught me to trust my hands, and about how he made mistakes, especially about that. Claire opened her door. She needs to know brilliance doesn't protect you from failure, that even the best can fall, that redemption is possible if you're willing to pay the price. See you tomorrow then. Michael started to leave, stopped, turned back. Claire, I'm glad we found our way back. Me too. Claire's voice caught. Me too, little brother. Inside her quarters, Claire set the wire cutters on her desk. Beside them, a photo of her father in his uniform, young and confident, before Gulf War changed him, before the weight settled onto his shoulders. She opened her laptop, started drafting the curriculum for next week's classes. Hybrid EOD protocols, human judgment as primary, AI as support, the framework for a new way of training that trusted people over machines. Her phone buzzed. Text from Torres. Heard about the promotion? Congrats, Sergeant Major. You earned it. Another text from Washington. Hendricks' doctrine sounds good. When do I get to take the class? Another from Cole. Your dad would be proud. Hell, I'm proud. Well done, Marine. Claire read them all. Let herself feel the connection. The team that had walked through Firebase Vulture was still together, still supporting each other, still proving that bonds forged under pressure lasted longer than career assignments. She pulled up Vincent Drake's file, the one Torres had recovered from his hideout, encrypted documents, video testimony, and one file labeled simply for Claire. She'd avoided opening it for 3 months. Wasn't sure she wanted to hear what Vincent had to say beyond his confession. But tonight, with the weight finally lifting, she clicked it open. Video filled the screen. Vincent in his wheelchair, thinner than she remembered, gray in his beard, eyes that held too much pain. His voice came through the speakers. Claire, if you're watching this, I'm dead. Good. I don't deserve to live with what I did. But before I go, I need you to know some things. He shifted in the chair, the stumps of his legs visible below his shorts. Kandahar wasn't your fault. It was mine. I falsified the AI data because I believed in technology more than people. I thought I was proving a point. Instead, I killed 11 Marines, our brothers, your friends, and when the investigation started, when they were looking for someone to blame, I let them find you. I testified against you. I destroyed your career to save myself from the truth. His voice broke. He wiped his eyes. I've lived with that guilt every day since. The phantom pain in my legs is nothing compared to the pain of knowing I made you carry my sins. You lost your marriage, your relationship with Michael, your peace, all because I was too coward to admit what I'd done. Vincent leaned closer to the camera. Firebase Vulture was my attempt to give it back, to create a situation where you could prove what I knew all along, that you're brilliant, that you can be trusted, that you make the right calls when it matters. Every device I built was solvable. Every test was designed to let you succeed, because you deserved that, deserved the chance to prove everyone wrong. He pulled out a worn photograph, showed it to the camera. The team from Kandahar, 11 faces circled in red marker. I'm going to die making sure the truth comes out, making sure you get back what I took. It's not enough. Nothing could be enough, but it's all I have left to give. His eyes met the camera, met Claire's eyes across time and death. I'm sorry, Claire, for everything. Tell my daughter I loved her. Tell her I was sick, but I tried to make it mean something at the end. And tell yourself what you should have known 3 years ago. Kandahar wasn't your fault. It was mine. Stop carrying my sins. You've got enough weight in that ruck already. The video ended. Black screen, silence. Claire sat motionless, tears streaming down her face. Not sad tears, released tears, the kind that come when pressure that's been building for years finally finds an outlet. Vincent had given her everything. Career, brother, truth, peace. He'd paid for it with his life, with a confession that had destroyed his reputation and vindicated hers, with a final act that proved even people who make terrible choices can still find redemption. She closed the laptop, wiped her eyes, looked at the wire cutters gleaming on her desk. Tomorrow she would teach. would show 30 Marines how to trust their hands, would tell them about Firebase Vulture and Kandahar and the cost of trusting machines over judgment, would make sure Vincent Drake's daughter learned her father's brilliance without inheriting his guilt. But tonight she would rest, would let the weight settle into something manageable, would accept that she'd been broken and had healed stronger in the places where she'd cracked. The stars were bright outside her window, the same stars that watched over her father in Gulf War, the same stars that looked down on every battlefield and every choice and every person who'd ever carried the weight. But Claire Hendricks wasn't carrying it alone anymore, and that made all the difference. 6 months later, the first class graduated from the Hendricks Doctrine program. 30 Marines who understood that hybrid command meant trusting people first and technology second, who knew how to use wire cutters and multimeters and robots and AI, who understood that the job required all the tools but depended on the person holding them. Sarah Drake graduated top of her class, gave a speech about legacy and redemption and learning from parents' mistakes without being defined by them, about carrying forward the best and leaving behind the worst, about choosing to be better. Claire stood at the back of the auditorium, watched her students receive their certifications, watched them become the next generation of EOD technicians who would carry the lessons forward, who would make choices under pressure and trust their training and bring everyone home alive. Michael sat beside her, whispered, "Dad would love this." Claire nodded, couldn't speak past the tightness in her throat. After the ceremony, Sarah approached, held out a small package wrapped in brown paper. "I found this in my father's things. Thought you should have it." Claire unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a set of wire cutters, not her father's, different, newer, with a note attached in Vincent's handwriting. "Claire, these are for you, not to replace your father's. Those are sacred, but to supplement them, because sometimes you need more than one tool. Sometimes you need options. Always trust your hands. Always make the hard choice. Always remember that the third option exists if you're willing to find it. Teach that to everyone who comes after us. Make sure my mistakes become lessons instead of warnings. Make sure my daughter knows I tried to be better at the end." Vincent. Claire held the cutters, felt their weight, different from her father's but serving the same purpose. Tools that saved lives, tools that required skilled hands, tools that proved human judgment mattered. "Thank you." Claire's voice was rough. "I'll use them well." "I know you will." Sarah smiled. "You're the best teacher I could have asked for. You showed me my father wasn't just his mistakes. He was also his brilliance, his dedication, his choice at the end to make things right. That's what I'm carrying forward." She saluted. Claire returned it. Teacher and student. Two people connected by tragedy and bound by the choice to transform it into something that mattered. The ceremony concluded. The graduates dispersed. Claire and Michael walked through the facility one last time before heading home. Stopped at the memorial wall where names of EOD techs killed in action were carved in stone. Vincent Drake's name wasn't there. He hadn't died in action, had died by his own hand. But his legacy was written differently. In the protocols that bore Claire's name, in the students who learned hybrid command, in the system that now trusted people over machines. Claire touched the wall, felt the names under her fingers, each one a life, each one a choice, each one a person who'd carried the weight until it became too much. "We're going to make sure fewer names get added." Her voice was quiet but firm. "We're going to train them better, support them better, trust them better. That's what all this means. That's what Vincent's confession bought." Michael put his hand on her shoulder. "That's what your 3 years of pain bought. You could have given up, could have stayed bitter, could have let the guilt destroy you. Instead, you turned it into this, into something that saves lives." They walked out into evening light. The sun was setting over Quantico, painting everything in shades of gold and rose. The same light that fell on Arlington, the same light that watched over their father's grave and Vincent's ashes and every other person who'd served and sacrificed. Claire pulled out her father's wire cutters, held them up to the dying light. The metal gleamed, 50 years old, still sharp, still ready. "The wire and the bond," she spoke quietly. "That's what it's always been about. The wire doesn't care about rank or protocol or what some AI thinks should happen. It only cares about the hands holding it and the bond between the person and their training, between student and teacher, between father and daughter, between brother and sister." She lowered the cutters, slipped them back into her pocket. That's the legacy, not the devices we diffuse, not the lives we save, but the bonds we build, the trust we create, the belief that human judgment, flawed as it is, still matters most. That's what Dad taught me. That's what I'm teaching them. That's what endures. Michael nodded, the wire and the bond. They walked to the parking lot together. Two siblings who'd been broken by lies and healed by truth. Who'd learned that starting forward was better than trying to reclaim the past. Who'd discovered that the weight was lighter when carried together. Behind them, the training facility glowed in the twilight. Inside, the next class was already starting. New students learning old lessons. Young hands learning to trust themselves. The cycle continuing. And somewhere above them, stars were appearing. The same stars that had watched it over their father. The same stars that would watch over their students. The same stars that saw everything and judged nothing and simply existed as witness to the choices people made and the weight they carried and the bonds they built. Claire Hendricks drove into the night beside her brother. Behind her, a program that would change how the military thought about human judgment. Ahead of her, a future built on lessons learned through pain and proven through action. The wire cutters in her pocket pressed against her ribs. A reminder, a tool, a promise. Some weights you carried, some weights you shared, some weights you transformed into something that mattered. And sometimes, if you were lucky, the wire and the bond were enough to see you through.